So, diving right in, I love this opening. I really enjoy the opening of this heavy Metallica-style thrash rock playing, accompanied to the montage of a printing press sequence showing, the latest Sutter Kane novel being printed.
Yeah.
It's like, what if we hired Metallica to do a PSA ad to show you how cool it is to read books and making books is awesome?
It felt like when Mr. Rogers would go, let's go see how books are made. Hello, and welcome to Judgmental Horror Junkies. This is Reno Dino Valentino, head doctor at the Asylum for the Insane. And with me as always is Goreship, the ship that sells the river Styx, where the paddles are made of bone and the steering wheel is made of more bone. How are you, Goreship?
I'm good. I'm Steamboat Willie in this shit.
Steamboat...
I can legally say that now.
I can, right? Yeah.
Public domain, bitches.
We got some public domain shit. Actually, weirdly, tomorrow I'm going to record Comic Dissection with Cecilia Rose, and we are going to talk about Fable, another comic that is under some weird free domain versus copyright bullshit. So we're actually going to hit that weird topic of public domain head on.
Very ironic how that worked out.
Yes, if you want to hear more about the boring subject of copyrights, tune in to the Fable episode of Comic Dissection.
Reno.
Yes.
It is good to be back in the saddle again.
It is always good.
Always enjoy it.
But especially good today because...
One of our favorites.
I would say I have three movies that I consider the top tier horror movies for me, and all for different reasons. Gremlins, which we've already covered.
Yep.
Jacob's Ladder, which we certainly will cover.
At some point.
And In the Mouth of Madness, which is what we are covering today.
Oh.
The John Carpenter masterpiece based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft.
Loosely, you have to say loosely based off of the works of H.P. Lovecraft, get reinterpreted, because this comes back into public domain issues.
It's quite true.
And copyright.
It's one of the things where I was like, the writer is named Sutter Kane, and I often, like, as I watched this movie, I was like, we should have just H.P. Lovecraft, called him H.P. Lovecraft, and like did a multiverse story here, because that's all I kept thinking was Sutter Kane equals H.P. Lovecraft.
With
like even the name of some of his books.
Yeah,
like I'm close, like those are so close they hurt my brain. Like, but that is not. I'm in no way maligning this film. It is, like I said, one of my top 3 favorite horror films of all time. Like, it is just chef's kiss of. And we were talking before the podcast. It's a chef's kiss of payoffs. It's a chef's kiss of one-liners. It's a chef's kiss of fucking, like, just...
Quality acting delivery.
Quality acting delivery, especially the last scene, which I will talk about. Chef's kiss. Also, it's got... Much like The Haunting of Hill House, I always talk about how that's got all the different horror types. You've got your jump scares. You've got your body horror. You've got your just... eerie, unsettling feelings. You've got your
creature
gore.
Feature.
You've got your creatures. You've got your serial killer.
A little bit of axe slasher.
You got your serial killer, axe murder. It really does like touch almost every type of horror. And as an homage to H.P. Lovecraft, I don't know how you could do it any other way. But John Carpenter,
this man,
magnifique. This man.
Did he score this movie beautifully? Like, it had me hooked just from the score.
Fucking hard rock.
Yes, his choice of music scoring to set the tone of the
totally different from Malignant. Totally different from our musical score from last month. But yeah, In the Mouth of Madness, 1995, John Carpenter. Goreship, what do you recall your first encounter with The Mouth of Madness and how you felt after watching the film?
So the first time I ever watched In The Mouth of Madness was, I remember back in the late 90s, I want to say around like 98, 99, it was on free late night horror TV access. We were watching the Friday Movie Fest. It was me, my dad, my brother, and my mom.
Okay.
And nobody else liked it but my father and I. We were the only two that were into it. And I, of course, as a child, only recognized Sam Neill from Jurassic Park.
Right.
I really only recognized Sam Neill as Jurassic Park. So
what a weird juxtaposition to see him in this versus him in... I mean, if you want to doubt Sam Neill's an actor, watch those two movies back to back and tell me he's a bad actor.
Such a contrast. And this was like I believe the first Sam Neill horror movie I ever watched before like I dove into he was also in the Omen series, playing an older Damien as the President Damien.
Yeah,
like that spiral that
Sam Neill's got a lot of horror chops that people who just know him from Jurassic Park and other films later on may not be aware of.
I do remember as a kid that there were so many parts of this that like had me spooked and confused at the same time, and it still kind of rings true today. I'm like, that's still fucking weird, dude. That's creepy. That's so strange.
Yeah, it's very much like it's just so weird it's creepy.
Yes.
Yeah, like just so strange.
And this is around the same time period that I was really getting into, Tales from the Crypt.
We need to do
mysteries.
We need to do a couple episodes of Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my god, love that.
Tales from the Crypt movie, Demon Knight, is still one of my favorites. Billy Zane deserves all the credit for that movie.
Yep.
That's a good one for a retro throwback that we should look into as well. But
absolutely,
this movie, I just remember as a kid loving it, really being enthralled by it, and still at the same time being like, I'm confused and scared, and I wasn't sure if it was going to give me nightmares.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, the old person on the bike scene.
Oh, there's
so much...
That is the scene that I was like... I think if that scene wasn't in the movie, as much as I love the whole movie, if that scene wasn't in the movie, I'm not sure it'd be one of my top 3. That scene's so fucking good.
That scene being parodied before I really knew what it was from.
Oh, yeah?
I forget what show we were watching, but I do remember them using that scene as a parody to make fun of something in a skit show.
Yeah, I didn't know In the Mouth of Madness was well enough known that it had earned a parody.
Yeah, it was something obscure, like some comedy show was doing like a skit, like for a Halloween episode, and they were kind of like reusing that trope of like, hey, this dude keeps passing us.
Yeah, nice. But, I watched it on a VHS tape that a friend of mine who like is a horror fiend and we would just watch whatever horror movie. He would go to thrift stores and flea markets and garage sales, and back then in the early 90s you could get a VHS out of somebody's like box for $2 and take it home, pop it in the VCR, and have an hour and a half laugh fest, and then toss it in your VHS pile and never look at it again.
Dollar movie night, man.
Yeah, fucking dollar. Was the shit. And then Blockbuster would have like old VHSs that they would then sell back to the public, and those were super cheap. So he would just go around and he would just have like I owe this man, Chris, mad props if you're out there. I owe this man a lot of my monster taste. Like the first time I watched this movie was with him. The first time I watched the 1980s version of The Blob, which we will cover at some point, was with him. So many weird and great movies that I watched with him. And In the Mouth of Madness was one that we both, like, after it was over, were like... It felt weird because we were expecting a bad horror movie. We were like, yeah, we'll watch it and we'll make fun of it. And we tried for like the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then we were enthralled and we were just fucking watching the movie. And by the end of it, we were like, God damn, that was a good movie. Not at all what I was expecting.
You know how I know this stands the testament of time? Because, all right, so my fiance...
Because the Carpenters still suck?
Well, also, I mean, hey.
Burn.
No, my fiance, she has like kind of like a hesitation when watching quote unquote older horror movies because of the lack of quality of film and like cheesy acting and prosthetics and practice. But she actually, when I was on the Sam Neill kick, I showed her Event Horizon and I showed her Into the Mouth of Madness.
Nice.
And I was like, you gotta watch these two. These are two of his best films. And she loved both of them, even though they're quote unquote older. For her, she really enjoyed them, and so that's how I knew that it stood the test of time, because someone who has like an
aversion,
they don't like the quality of older films. She actually enjoyed this. I knew it was a hit.
Yeah,
and then I walked away from this movie once again being like, dude, put some fucking respect on Sam Neill's name. This dude. This dude still got it. To this day, I would love to see him do another horror movie. Now that he's much older, I would love to see him come out of like his semi-retirement and do
Let him be the old guy at the gas station that warns the kids not to go to that town. Like, give him something.
Exactly,
I'd love to see him back in it. Yeah,
it'd be great. But, as always, I'm going to open this with a quick synopsis provided to us.
You do synopsis, I'll do cast, and then we'll jump in.
Database. When horror novelist Sutter Kane goes missing, insurance investigator John Trent scrutinizes the claim made by his publisher, Jackson Harglow, and he endeavors to retrieve a yet-to-be-released manuscript and ascertain the writer's whereabouts. Accompanied by the novelist's editor, Linda Stiles, and disturbed by nightmares from reading Kane's other novels, Trent makes an eerie nighttime trek to a supernatural town in New Hampshire called Hobbs End.
Hobbs End. So, as we've mentioned 100 times, Sam Neill plays John Trent. We've also got Julia Karen as Linda Stiles. Jürgen Perknow. I am sorry, Jürgen. I'm sure your last name was decimated by me.
Polish or German.
But that is Sutter Kane, our evil novelist. David Warner is Dr. Wren, our doctor that treats John Trent. Treat being heavy, parentheses. And a special cameo by John Glover, who is Saperstein. Again, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right, but he is the doctor that helps Dr. Wren and admits Sam Neill. You might know my favorite role of John Glover. He was the voice of the Riddler on Batman, the animated series. But he's been all over the fucking place.
I knew him from Smallville as Lex Luthor's father.
Yes. And that's actually
Michael Luthor.
His IMDb picture face is him like that with the long hair and the beard. And so I almost didn't recognize him when he popped up in this as the fresh-faced young... Like, I'm going to shave and get a haircut tomorrow, and I will have the John Glover transformation. Like, you won't be able to tell me apart from... But yeah, and also, this is a weird one. A young Hayden Christensen
beat me to it.
Cameo.
Yeah, it's like the most important role, the most important cameo
as newspaper boy.
Yes.
So a young Hayden Christensen before his Anakin days, rocking out in a John Carpenter film. Who would have fucking thunk it? But we will mention him when he pops up. It is we're talking a minute and a half tops. It's a very short scene, but either his first or one of his first roles here in the Mouth of Madness.
Probably like second or third credit.
Yeah. But good for him. And good for Carpenter for giving these young guys a fucking chance. Yeah, give him a chance.
So, diving right in, I love this opening. I really enjoy the opening of this heavy Metallica-style thrash rock playing, accompanied to the montage of a printing press sequence showing, the latest Sutter Kane novel being printed. Yeah. It's like, what if we hired Metallica to do a PSA ad to show you how cool it is to read books and making books is awesome?
It felt like when Mr. Rogers would go, let's go see how books are made. And but yeah, if Metallica was doing the score.
That's what it felt like. It really did. Just the constant thrash rock with the montage.
Because I had not seen this movie in a while, I forgot the opening, and I did not know what was happening at first. I was like, what am I watching? Like a factory? And then I was like, oh, these are the books. And then when you know the movie and the plot of the movie, I'm like, well, that's about the most perfect opening you could have for this film. But yeah, great opening. And again, great rock. And followed up by another great Asylum. Malignant had an amazing looking Asylum. This one does, but totally different. Think one story, super modern, and so white you can barely look at it.
Also near the beach. Also on the coast setting.
That is a great place for an asylum because the waves are relaxing.
Well, they just open the windows. Trembling because if someone escapes the asylum, they might jump off the cliff to their death. I don't know. I feel there's a lot of
Arkham Asylum is also sometimes on a cliff. Depends on.
Well, that's trying to keep those crazy bastards in.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's because they are hoping that if Mad Hatter breaks out, they're like, oh God, please jump off a cliff. We are so tired of your shit. Like, we cannot open a mushroom-themed restaurant without you fucking it up. Just jump off this cliff and save us the trouble.
Nobody can have tea time.
Yeah. We can't even have a tea shop with your crazy ass.
It's also appropriate that they chose metal, like rock music, as the score for the opening of the printing press sequence because that's what leads to madness. Back during the early to mid-90s, they were doing this whole campaign against, Mothers Against metal, and they were trying to censor it, and they're like, grunge
grunge rock was starting to pop up and scare people.
Satan is hidden in the metal, and it's so appropriate that during this time period, John Carpenter was like, "Dude, I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna choose rock music because you guys
not just choose right." Yeah, John Carpenter's a co-writer of this. Yeah,
it was a choice though to like I could have had any music. I could have had synth music like I did with Halloween.
Some nice symphonic.
I could have done some stuff like I scored for like The Thing. I could have done so much stuff.
I could have just got some public domain Mozart.
Like heavy thrash rock because I guess it's to me it felt like a commentary of the time as a choice. Be like, people already think that metal leads to Satanism and leads to you going crazy and killing each other. So it kind of felt like a fun little play knowing John Carpenter as the person he is.
Yeah. I also assume that's his style.
It felt like a good
I also
choice.
assume that's what he listens to in his free time. Like, don't know him. The
man is like 79 years old. Yeah. He's released so many out.
I bet he is still listening to metal in his free time.
Yeah, I think he just recently pumped out a synth rock album. Yeah. Or another one, self-published.
Nice. Good on you, Carpenter. You're never too old to rock. But yeah, we have our white asylum, and we meet John Glover, who is asking, is he here?
He's our reluctant patient.
He's our reluctant patient. And we also, of course, meet John Trent, who is being dragged in a straitjacket and fighting with the with the guards, and ends up getting one right in the balls.
I love the line when they throw him in the padded cell.
Sorry about the balls. It was a lucky shot.
Classic. Such a good delivery.
Yeah. So he shows up and.
Also, immediately, the look of insanity on his face, Sam Neill just captures when he's just in the straitjacket staring out the window, just with these crazy bug-eyed dead stare. It's just
my God.
Yeah, you really feel like that crazy guy on the corner of the street you want to avoid.
Plus, I love the whole when he goes to the bars and yells, "I'm not crazy," and then it's a symphony all down the line. Every other person in every other cell's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not. If he's not crazy, I'm not crazy.
I shouldn't be in here. I'm not crazy either."
And I'm just like. Yeah, the whole "I'm actually not crazy" thing. When has that ever worked, buddy? And then John Glover, he's like, I don't want to listen to all the crazy. So he pumps the Carpenters up. He's like, let's listen to some music instead. And of course, we get John Trent's line, which was my joke earlier. He's like, oh no, not the Carpenters too. Like, if you want to torture somebody... And I'll be honest, there's probably some good Carpenter songs, but the worst Carpenter songs are some of the worst songs. I'm not saying they're all bad, but I'm saying the ones that are bad are so fucking bad.
But it doesn't last long. It's fine. He sits there and he finally just gives in to I'm fucking here. And then all of a sudden you hear the winding down noise of the record cutting off and the lights dimming. Yeah. And just that aura shift of something.
I've moved from the world of normal problems to the world of supernatural problems.
And of course he's like, well, shit seems a little more dim outside. I guess what's going on? And of course we get a shadowy figure just standing there behind him.
Yep. Yep. And he says something like, is that not a good way to end it? Or I did not write this line down exactly.
Yeah,
but and the mystery shadow is like, oh, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. And then you get the flash and
montage of all these horrifying sights, and tentacles, people with axes, and
he's like, oh no, the best is yet to come. Yeah. And throws these thoughts.
I got a plan for you.
Yeah, he throws these thoughts into poor John Trent's head. Meanwhile, Dr. Saperstein lets Dr. Wren into the hospital, and Dr. Wren's super excited to talk to John Trent. He's because of what's happening outside. We as the audience don't know yet what that is, but John Glover's like, oh, if you're coming to talk to this guy, it must be bad out there. And Dr. Wren does not answer, but goes to talk with our John Trent.
His face reads 1,000 words.
Yeah, exactly. And Dr. Wren's like, well, has he asked for anything? And Saperstein's like, just a black crayon, easy, nothing big. And Wren and John Glover, they open up the door and it's just crosses everywhere.
Yeah, just scratch crosses all over his inmate outfit, all over his face,
the padded walls,
all over the floor, on the chairs. I'm like, damn, that one crown did some work, man.
Yeah. There can't be much left to it. Yeah. I mean, thick crosses, thin crosses, right side up crosses, and sideways crosses.
So funny about this cross thing is like, a couple years ago when I was looking for a place to live, we were checking out a house, this one house gave me just bad vibes. I can't explain it. I'm usually very practical about this kind of stuff. There's something about walking the house I just felt off, felt watched. We go inside to check out the bedrooms, and inside the closet, just like John's padded cell, was these crisscross, like crown-drawn crosses all over the wall, above the door frame, inside the closet. I was like, yeah, this is not the place for us. This is not a good vibe. So I just abandoned. I was like, all right, next place, because it took me back to like the craziness of In the Mouth of Madness. Just those crosses everywhere.
Goreship, that is insane. That's a perfect closet to put your cursed items in. That's what that closet's for.
I felt like they were keeping something cursed in there.
If you've got a Necromonicon, that's a great closet for that. You've got a doll that head's always moving, you can toss in there. Like,
trust me, just that house was not a vibe. It was not a good vibe.
Most houses do not come with blessed closets. I feel like you missed an opportunity there.
I think I dodged an exorcism bullet. I think I dodged a potential exorcism.
You dodged a vampire stake. Yes, you probably did.
Again, it's funny because that was the first thing I thought when I saw those crosses. I was like, God damn it, this is just like In the Mouth of Madness. Mm-hmm. It's like, where's the crazies? Where's the crazy hiding in this house?
Yeah, right. Under the floorboards would be my guess. Doctor, we're in. Basically asked for John Trent's backstory. So this is how we're going to get our tale of what happened from John Trent's.
There's also a fun little exchange here when he's Dr. Wren is discussing with John about the potential of, hey, if you cooperate with me, maybe you'll get out of here. Mm-hmm. John's like, I'm good here. I'd like to stay here.
I've changed my mind.
Why is that? Dr. Wren says there was a guard with swollen testicles out there that could have swore you wanted out of here. Yeah. That line again.
Good. And again, delivered so deadpan, just perfect.
And John's just like, yeah, well, that was then. This is now. Things have changed.
Yeah. That's before I had my vision of things to come and decided it's actually going to be better in here than out there. And Trent also calls Dr. Wren out like, oh, if you're here, things outside must be pretty garbage.
Pretty insane,
yeah. And Dr. Wren, like a very good psychologist, is like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about you, baby.
What happened?
I want to talk about you
with Sutter Kane.
Yeah, I want to talk about you. And John Trent's like, all right. So we get his backstory. He's an insurance investigator who helps insurance companies find out fraud so that insurance companies don't have to pay people. So let's be honest, he's the bad guy.
And now through this this quick shift change, we've learned that we are starting our story at the end and working our way backward.
Yeah,
and so all of the movie you're about to see is a narration point from John's point of view.
Right. Like, how did John get to be a dude all crossed up in an asylum? Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because here we go.
And this makes the whole narration questionable, because you can't trust your narrator to be telling you, like, is this real? Is this all this dude's saying? He's clearly in a padded cell for a reason. So you take it with a grain of salt that, like, what happens next?
When you're talking to someone in a straitjacket, it is the definition of an unreliable narrator. Like, you can't get more unreliable.
But this narrator, if we believe him, is really good at being an asshole at insurance fraud.
And also good at, like, seeking out the truth. That's his entire, for lack of a better term, that's his entire gimmick. So we get a scene of him doing his insurance investigator stuff.
Reaming down some rich guy who tried to burn all of his items up and claim insurance on like mink coats and Rolexes and stuff that was lost in a fire.
Turns out the mink coats were seen after the fire on both his wife and his mistress. And our good man John Trent was wise enough to show the wife both pictures. And so she flipped on this dude like that.
Yeah, ratted him out. And I love the quote here. Again,
another great line.
Yep. He says, while rubbing the man's shoulders, he says, word of advice, if you want to pull a scam, don't make your wife a partner. And if you do, don't fuck around on her while you do it.
And to all my fellow scammers out there, great advice. Great advice. So the guy who's watching this all happen, who's the owner of the insurance company,
Mr. Robinson,
takes him out to lunch to congratulate him on his amazing victory, and talks about how awesome it is to watch him work.
Also, I'm a lone ranger. I don't work for nobody. I'm a free man.
Yeah, he's a freelance. He doesn't work for this insurance company. He just picked up this gig for them.
Yeah.
And the guy's trying to get him as a full-timer, but he's like, I don't want anyone pulling my strings. I like being on my own. I like being a freelancer.
But he does lead at the end. We're like, well, but if the pay and pension is good, I could be swayed.
Well, yeah, and he's like, well, whether you want to be full-time or not, I have a job I need you on, another job.
And
this is where we get our first mention of Sutter Kane.
this is the very first mention of Sutter Kane's name brings in the madness. Yeah. It literally brings the madness to his fucking window.
Yeah, as soon as the name's mentioned, you can see, like, they're eating by a window, and you can see through the window, like, across the street, a dude run out of a shop, and behind him, a dude with an axe walk out and start beelining towards that window. But our two guys talking are completely unaware of this.
They're oddly faced away directly towards the aisle, not looking like at each other. It was a very odd positioning of their bodies.
Yeah, it had to be done so that guy could speak up. Yeah, but you're right. In a normal conversation, that is not how you would sit. But they're talking, and he's like, "Hey, one of my biggest clients my biggest client is a book company. They're taking out a claim on this guy named Sutter Kane." Who was their biggest asset. Who was their biggest asset. Yeah. And
he's gone missing.
It's a huge payout for us if we have to do it, and I'd like you to look into it and see if they're scamming. And before the last thing he says before the glass breaks is, "Who is Sutter Kane?"
Glass smashes the axe. And they're just panicking, and John looks up and he sees this psycho with an axe whose eyes have changed. Yeah. They have this eldritch horror,
the pupils are look. Bigger and like broken around the edges. It's a really cool look.
What fish and goats have.
Yeah.
The way that their pupils kind of almost do a bisection, where it looks like their iris is split into two.
Yeah, it's so neat.
It was a really great choice because it gives like an old fish god look.
Yeah, which, hey, I know a writer that's really into old fish gods. So guy raises the axe up, and before he drops it down, ask him, "Hey, you read any Sutter Kane?" And the cops, for once, actually saved the day. Don't worry, we'll see some cops being shitty later. But in this scene, they actually stop an axe murder. Because they shoot this guy right before he drops the axe.
And after dealing with that trauma...
Yeah, and Trent's... You gotta imagine Trent's surprise. Never heard the name Sutter Kane. Twice in like 10 seconds. And the first time by a guy offering him a lot of money.
For a good job.
And 10 seconds later, it's a guy getting ready to bury an axe in his face. Like, that is whiplash. Like, Sutter Kane, a good luck name or a bad luck name? A lot of money.
He gets home later that night and he's watching the news. And you see the news is covering, once again, Sutter Kane and the way his books have taken the world by storm. Driving some people about... This is really
a little while.
Hold on. This is really important.
Okay.
His books drive people of a lower IQ mad. Mm-hmm. You notice a lot of the people that were going mad were people that look like your average business running people, people that are like
that might be a little new spin.
Yeah, I was like, so those people are viewed as lesser intelligent, and people who have brain deformities or whatever they consider them. Those are the ones that are easily affected. Those are the ones who will slip into madness through reading his books.
Well, a lot of times when there is something like this, the news will try and justify it, because the news has to walk this delicate edge, because they want you scared, but they don't want you so scared that you don't go out and buy shit. So it's always walking this delicate line. So they're like, hey, it's driving some people a little crazy, but don't worry, it's only the dum-dums. Like, you're fine. Now watch out, because they might come at you. But you still need to go out and keep the wheels of capitalism going. Otherwise, what are we even doing here?
Ironically, that was going to lead into my next point when we get to this meeting with the CEO.
Yeah. But John takes the case because money trumps axe murders.
John has taken a very firm standpoint right off the gate after watching the end. He was like, just a bunch of fucking crazies.
Well, no, his
it's just a mass hysteria thing. It's not...
Well, he said mass hysteria or publicity stuff.
Yes. Yeah. He's like, that's why I think this is really turned into. He's like, it's just them trying to cultivate like a insular bubble of like a pop thing,
and pop culture. At this point, I want to ask John Trent, publicity stunt, who is willing to get shot and kill for a publicity stunt? Like, I mean, you've got to find. Like, you can't just say that. You can't just Alex Jones say that. You got to find a little proof. Find that, like, if he got suicided by cop, his family was going to get a big pile of money from the insurance company. Find proof that, like, that guy had some vested interest in whether Sutter Kane novels sold or not. Without any of that, you're not being ruled by logic. You're just being ruled by a stubborn belief that everybody lies. You're doing the fucking Dr. House thing where it's like, oh, everyone lies, so...
Well, he does take that initiative. He arrives the next morning at the publisher's office, and we get a very nifty close-up of the detail of the most recent book that came out from Sutter Kane. Mm-hmm. And you see this, like, really Cthulhu-like, eldritch horror being being depicted, while Kane is this maniacal god over them, controlling the words.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very... nice foreshadowing. Yes, very, very nice foreshadowing of what's to come.
Yeah.
But it also leads into John just doubling down. I was like, what is this trash?
Yeah.
He just...
Yeah, John has no respect for pretty much fiction writing in general.
It's almost
not a reader.
Insulting disdain.
Yeah. Not a reader.
Beneath him?
Yeah, he straight up asks, hey, you got a movie?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we will in a month. We don't have one yet. In fact, one of the reasons we need you is because the movie we've promised, the script for it, and the script for Sutter's new book, which is called In the Mouth of Madness, we don't have a manuscript for it because fucking Sutter disappeared. And he's like, wow, a horror writer disappeared. That's got to be good. That's got to be good press for your book. And they're like, you're not listening, John. We don't have a book.
Yeah. And it's funny. So when he goes in this office, he meets Miss Stiles. She is a very big advocate of
Linda Stiles,
reading Sutter Kane's books.
Yeah.
And she's like, what, don't you read? It's almost insulting. But then the same phrase, when he looks back at her, she's giving him this cheeky smile.
Yeah.
Almost flirtatious.
Yeah. It's very... he's being insulting and she's being insulting back. And you also kind of get the impression that, like, she is taking this way more seriously than he is, because he makes a joke about... He finds out... Oh, yeah, this is real important. He finds out that the guy that tried to axe him was the last guy to receive any communication from Sutter Kane. It was his agent.
Yeah.
And Sutter Kane sent him, like, the first 3 chapters... And apparently he read them and it sent him off the deep end.
Yeah, the publisher basically informs him, he's like, look, I'm hiring you because Sutter Kane was supposed to turn in this novel. He never had. The last person that he was in touch with was his agent, and that turned out to be the crazy axe murderer guy that was shot to death by the cops in front of you yesterday. And John's like, whoa, that was him? That was his agent?
Yeah.
And he's kind of taken aback by it. He's like, oh, this is a good joke. This is a good scheme you guys are pulling.
Yeah.
And I want to say this. The publisher's tone. He's like, look, I don't give a fuck if Sutter Kane is alive or dead. All I care about is this company gets its money's worth from its asset. We want our fair share.
We either want the book or we want the insurance settlement.
He's like,
we just need the money.
Up says, I don't care if he's alive or dead. I want what is ours. What this company is owed. Our fair share.
Yeah.
And I just had to write down, I was like... they just care about their investment asset, and that's the true heart of this journey into madness, thanks to capitalistic greed.
Oh, yeah. Sutter Kane is just a cog in the machine. It doesn't matter. And something else, like, Linda and John both allude to the fact that his previous books have caused... It's kind of like the Catcher in the Rye. It's got a lot of bad, like, karma with it. People who've read those books have done bad things. Like, do you want to put... And John's like, do you want to put another book like this out into the world that's going to cause more bad things? And, of course, the guy's like, yeah, because money, lots of it, like...
Yeah, he borderline calls the writing trash. He borderline calls it garbage.
Oh, yeah, he straight up says, I don't read it. Like, no, God, no, I don't read it. But the idiots do, and they make me a lot of money. And Linda's on the other side. She's like, oh, it's actually art.
Yeah, just give it a chance. Read it. Do you have anything on tape?
Yeah. Do you have a movie?
No. But before he gets an elevator to leave for the day, she's like, really, you should look into reading his books before you go find him to know him better. Yeah. He's like, got any on tape? Because he would much rather just listen to it than have to burden himself with reading it.
Well, because if you just hit play on a tape player, you can ignore it. Yeah, exactly.
Bits and pieces.
So it's funny because her and the director both come to the same conclusion, but from different paths. They're like, hey, yes, this may prey on the weaker of society, mentally weak, but A, it makes a lot of money, and B, it's art, and sometimes people have to suffer for art.
Speaking of preying on the weaker and suffering, ACAB.
Yeah, John.
ACAB.
John, on the way home, he goes to
1312 ACAB.
Yeah, absolutely. He's walking by an alley, and there is a cop just beating the fuck out of a spray painter.
Yeah, graffiti artist.
That's right, a graffiti artist, not even a pickpocket, which I would still not be approving of, but a dude that's vandalizing an alley wall. The only reason alley walls exist is for tags. That is the only purpose an alley wall has. No one goes down an alley wall and is like, this wall would be really pretty if they didn't have all this fucking graffiti. No one gives a shit. It's an alley wall. Let the dude tag it.
Maybe he was moonlighting for the beautification committee.
Yeah, it turns out he's a Sutter fanatic who's writing I Can See You, but he didn't get finished. This cop is pounding on people, and to make it more eerie, number one, the lighting is super good. You have like one light in the back that's like shining down on this scene. And you also have an audience who's just silently standing around watching like zombies.
And John feigns like he's going to walk towards the cop to stop him. The cop just is like, what, you want some too, pal?
And it turns out John does not. Trent keeps on trucking.
Tuck's tail.
Yeah, which we're getting a lot of different... Trent will show bravery later. But his bravery is only directly connected to the case. Like, he is very brave when it comes to sniffing out liars, but he's not going to stand up for some dude getting beat up in an alley. Like, that's not his... Like, later, there's like 8 dudes with shotguns, and he's like, I want to go talk to him. So if it's in pursuit of a case and truth, he's there. He's brave.
But he's not gained from, I guess,
exactly.
Innocent.
And it doesn't help his quest for truth and knowledge. So he lets this happen. And he keeps walking.
He goes home, he has a nice brandy and a scotch while shit talking on the phone, talking about, I don't buy any of this. I don't know who he was talking to, but he's like, I really don't buy into any of this. I just think this is some pop culture phenomenon that they're trying to make a ruse out of to get people invested in buying this new book. He's like, it feels like a really big scam. He's like, I feel like I'm onto a really juicy one.
I think he's talking to the head of the insurance company.
Robinson?
I think so, okay. But I don't think it's
that's the only other person I
think it's clear, and I also don't think it matters. The point is, still a skeptic. That's what that conversation dictates
and his skepticism honestly leads him to be committing to like, you know what, fuck it, I'll take this case. I really think these assholes are up to something, and I can't wait to shut them down and get them in trouble.
He's frothing at the mouth to like expose this scam because it's big money, and it's also like he really doesn't like liars, and he thinks these guys are lying to him. So much so, in fact, that he actually goes the next day and picks up some books. And meets a Sutter fan, another weird eye dude.
Creepy acne kid.
Yeah. Who also has the weird eyes.
Yeah.
And has like red spots on his face that don't... You say acne, but to me they look like burns.
Well, actually, sorry. They look like a mixture of like infected acne rashes that you see like on bad high schoolers. Also, it does look like it's boils under the skin, like something necrotic.
Yeah, it was creepy
because it becomes a reoccurring thing with people who are
you can tell
Sutter Kane fanatics.
Who's read more and who's read less Sutter Kane
between the skin complexion and the eyes.
Yeah, and he's like, he sees you, and John Trent's like, oh, well, tell him I said hi. Like, he's a little plussed. He's not completely cool as a cucumber. But he does fire off a one-liner and go buy his books. And
immediately after this, I've noticed this just starts reoccurring more and more as the movie goes on. Mm-hmm. This is one giant smoking ad. This movie is one giant smoking ad that really shows where we were at in the 90s.
Man, you could smoke anywhere back in those days.
Yeah, you could be in the middle of a fucking motel lobby, in a restaurant, at some publication. It blew my...
Every time he'd light up, I'd be like, wait, you're in a... Oh, yeah, it's the 90s.
Yeah, I was like, you're in a small confined space. Yeah. You're in an elevator. You're in... like in your apartment, whatever, but all these places...
And it's weird, too, because he's smoking in front of old ladies. He smokes in front of Linda, even when she's coughing and like trying to imply, please don't smoke in front of he lights up anywhere. But he goes home, he starts reading these books, and he's surprised. He's like, they're better written than you'd expect them to.
They're very, very disturbing.
Yeah, he's like, it's your normal heart. Like, at first he tries to be dismissive, but on the back end, there's all these compliments.
Because he makes a smart remark like, oh, these people are mutating after they read something. And he's like, it's just your generic, like body horror transformation.
But it's written better than you'd expect. And there's some twist you wouldn't see.
He kind of gives a little bit of credit.
He likes it more than he wants to admit. And then I want to ask you this, Goreship, because I wasn't sure. He starts kind of hallucinating while he's reading, or he falls asleep and he dreams. But... the scene that he is reliving is that alley scene where the guy's getting beat up. But this time there's no audience. Well, at first there's no audience. And the cop's still beating the guy. But when the cop turns, his face is fucked up.
It's like this weird mix of like what John Carpenter did with They Live, with the style of like, you know, in They Live, how they have this weird blue, red, yellow muscle tissue alien face.
Yeah,
and it kind
and
of
yellow eyes.
He did that, but he just gave it more of a regular flesh tone with his fish eyes.
Yeah. And then an audience appears, and they're all fucked up too. Like, they're all mutated in different ways.
The same axe guy is in that dream with a mob of people who are also there with axe.
Yeah.
They start moving in on John as he's kind of getting forced back towards the cop.
And the spray painting is finished now, and it does say he sees you.
He sees you.
Which is parroted by the editor with the axe, who is surrounded by other people with axes.
And when you think that the mob is going to chop him down, is going to chop John down to pieces, they wind up chopping one of their own down and taking pieces of him and eating them. And when you see that this mob is also deformed and mutated, like there's holes in their faces and there's body dysmorphia going on.
Every deformity is different, which
John
I appreciate.
backs up even further in a panic right into the cop. He's like, "You want some, punk?" And he jump scares awake.
Yeah, well, the cop gets ready to swing his nightstick on him, and right before contact, he's
wakes
scared
up
awake.
and jump scares awake, and then he's like, "Oh man, it was just a dream." Ha! Jump scare again.
Yeah,
a
the
dream
cop's
within
next
a dream.
to him on the couch.
Yes.
Yeah, but the question I wanted to ask is, he keeps reading, and he keeps going back to that scene, and what I wondered is, in the book, was he reading about that scene? Is that scene happening in the book?
It is implied
because it's sort of implied but not stated.
Yeah, it implied that John is basically reading a character that describes himself.
Yeah, witnessing the exact thing he witnessed,
and it triggers the dream sequence to go from like, all right, I see it in my head, and then I fall asleep and I see it again.
So this is the first instance we've had of the book like seemingly foretelling things that are happening in real life.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure, like, if he was just dreaming about something that happened to him. But he kept picking up the book and trying to read again, and it kept going back to that scene. So I was like, oh, maybe the thing he's reading about is the exact thing that's happening.
And he wakes up because he had the pen in his hand, and he wakes up with ink all over his hands. And he smears his face. And
Looks like he's going to play football.
And he's like, ah, shit. And he's like, where did this ink come from? And he looks down and notices his pen has leaked everywhere.
Yeah.
Because he had just had it tilted the entire time he was passed out.
Yep.
He's lost a sense of time. He's lost a sense of, like, you know, his ability to hold stuff together. And then, because of this distraction and him waking up, he notices this red line that keeps showing up on every cover. And it happens right as he asks himself, where are you, Sutter Kane?
Yeah.
Where did you go?
Yeah.
And he's like, wait a minute.
Oh,
they're all sitting on the table by each other.
Sutter Kane, an alias for Edward Nygma. He left me a clue on these books.
And so, like, to many, I guess, book lovers, horror, he starts cutting the covers off.
He rips the cover off all, like, he had 6 Sutter Kane books. I guess 6 is how many he'd written up to this point. And if you take all 6 of them and put them together, it's a map.
Well, you got to cut along the red line to trace it. Along the red line. And when he cut along the red line, it forms the shape of a state.
Yep.
Specifically, with the capital of where he's located, Hobbs End, in New Hampshire.
Yeah. Now, this may surprise you, gentle reader, but this adventure is going to take us to New England, which I know H.P. Lovecraft has no business being in New England. Oh, no, wait. Every single thing he's ever written happens in New England. So it is not a surprise to me that we are headed to New England.
And normally H.P. Lovecraft stuff in New England takes place around Vermont.
Or Arkham, Maine.
Yeah. So between those two places...
They did pick a different state.
They picked somewhere kind of in between Vermont and Maine.
Yeah, which I thought was
New
cute.
Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's just far away enough. Legally, we can't
have we done anything in New Hampshire yet? No? Okay, we're heading to New Hampshire. We also changed
the name of the town from Dunwich to Hobbs End.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he goes in to talk to the publisher owner and Linda, and he's like, explains what he's figured out and accuses them of this all being like
a PR stunt.
Yeah, like, oh, if I find Hobbs End and I find fucking Sutter Kane, do I get to have a free...
Down.
No, it's like, do I get to have free lunch with him? Is it a contest?
No, do you get a Sutter Kane lunchbox?
Yeah, Sutter Kane lunchbox. And the guy that owns the publishing company is like, I'm going to paraphrase, but he basically says, look, we'll make the same amount of money if you find this manuscript and we can publish the book as we would make from this insurance settlement. I have nothing to gain from lying to you. Go find Sutter Kane or don't.
Dead or alive, I want that manuscript.
Yeah, dead or alive, I either want my property or my settlement money. Yes. I don't give a shit. Like, do what you have to do to either give me a manuscript or a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Like,
and again, it comes back to his capitalistic greed of where his values truly lie in this. Because he's like, I don't give a fuck that the rest of the world's going crazy from his books. All I see are dollar signs. You know why? Because I'm not reading this shit. I'm just putting it out there for people.
And we are going to send Linda Stiles with you because she
represents the company.
She represents the company. She knows more about Sutter Kane than anybody, so she might be an asset.
Avid reader fan.
And our interest will be represented as well as your insurance companies if you find anything. Yep. So sure enough, cue road trip music, because here we go. And I like to say that at this point, John and Linda fucking hate each other.
Oh, dude, he seems like a terrible road companion.
Yeah.
Terrible.
They fucking, here's the thing. You said there was a flirty look between Linda and him earlier. I'll take your word for it, but ain't none of that shit now.
Yes. No, the visual cue was there on the initial meeting, but
well, there's one thing I'm great at missing. It's visual cues from women, so I'll take your word for it. But I will tell you this. Ain't no visual cue of love now. These two are enemies almost.
Not currently.
They are everything but enemies.
I mean, to be fair, as they're driving down the road, this asshole is not only hotboxing the car with her in it still while she's trying to sleep.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, we've been driving for X amount of hours.
And I'm bored because she's asleep and I'm awake.
So he grabs a fucking bike horn and decides to go honk and wake her ass up. Dude, she had every right to beat the shit out of him. Yeah. I don't give a fuck if you're driving. You don't do that to me.
Yeah, she throws everything in the car at him.
And he tries to act offended. He's like, don't you know it's a terrible idea to hit the driver?
No, he specifically said with popcorn. Because one of the things she threw was popcorn. It's like, you can never hit a driver with popcorn. Yeah. And I thought that was very funny because I was like, that is a weirdly specific thing to say. But yeah, they don't seem to they have a conversation in which, John's like, I like reality and truth. And why would anyone read this trash? And Linda says a line I really like. She's talking about reality. And she's like, well, your reality is in charge right now. But if enough people believed something different, that would become reality and you would be crazy.
Yeah.
And she wrote, I think it's fascinating to think what would happen if reality shared his point of view, talking about Sutter Kane's, as opposed to your point of view. And again, that's a little bit of foreshadowing.
And he has a very nihilistic approach to his outlook on life because he's like, well, I just think it's all trash anyways. And he says, quote, the sooner we're off this planet, the better.
Yeah.
Talking about wishing humanity was we'd be better removed from this place. Yeah. He has a very nihilistic approach.
And earlier he mentions we're poisoning the water, we're poisoning the land. Why not add poisoning our brains to it when he's
that's the reality he sees us in. He sees I see what we do to each other. And it was this whole spiel before she goes into, what we believe our reality to be true.
She also predicts his trip to the asylum. She's like, if you were the only person that thought the way you'd be the one the crazy about. Yeah. So a lot of great foreshadowing in this conversation. We fast forward a little bit to nighttime, and now Linda's driving.
There's one part that I love about that quote at the very end when it just goes into an awkward silence. Linda just puts him in this place. She's like, well, the difference between reality and sanity is just what we tell ourselves. Yeah. They're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I was like, he didn't really have much to say back to that. He's like,
yeah.
Well, fuck, I'll keep driving. Hey, I'm tired. You drive now.
Yeah. At some point, we fast forward to night. So I guess he's driven all day and now she's driving all night in theory. Which, once again, if you know she's going to take the night shift, don't wake her up. Let her sleep. And he's sleeping and she's not fucking with him. She's just fucking
driving.
Even
the weird shit's happening at right.
I'd fuck with him. I'd be like,
wake up. You need to wake up, motherfucker.
Yeah. But, then we have our biking scene.
So, as Linda's driving, she's driving down the road, and it's just getting more and more bleak. There's nothing for miles or on this backcountry corn road.
It's all black except the yellow line in the center of the road.
And you see a boy on a bike with, the old school little, playing card in his spoke.
It's a joker and a jack of diamonds, which is one way to get blackjack for whatever that's worth. I don't know if it's subtle or means anything.
And she sees the boy ride by.
Which is already weird, because it's 11 o'clock at night, and it's a deserted road. There's no houses
in the pitch black road, and so he rides by, and she just kind of looks at him, and
he has a terrified look on his face.
He looks fucking scared,
and the sound of the fucking the cards and the spokes is just hypnotic. It's like.
So she's like, holy shit, that was weird. And she goes to look over at John, but John's not even like...
He's passed out.
He's out cold.
Yeah.
She looks up and she sees the same guy on the bike again.
Wait, first she looks in the rearview mirror and you still see the terrified face, but now it's in the backlight of the brake light, so it's red. So he's got this, it's the same face but in a red light, and it looks even worse. And as he's being swallowed by darkness, and he looks like... He's just like, oh God, don't let the darkness take me, and then he's gone.
Yeah. She looks back to the road, she looks at John, she looks back at the road again, and she sees someone on a bike again. This time, it's the same person who's super old.
Same bike, same playing cards.
Same clothes.
But this person, same clothes, but this person is ancient. And again, you get the idea like, same guy, and still looks terrified. And even more terrified now.
And when he passes by for the second time, she looks away and she keeps looking back. And when she looks back to the road, all of a sudden, he's in her headlights again and she hits him.
Yeah.
Just smashes into him. He goes flying, runs over him.
He flies. And the bike flies. They both end up behind the car.
They flips over, rolls, and she comes to a screeching halt. John wakes up in a panic. He's like, what just happened? I just hit him. Hit who? A kid on a bike.
Yeah.
She gets out of the car, and he's laying in the prone position, and he's just saying...
John says, don't move him. And John's getting stuff out of the car. So she's the only one that sees or hears this. And I feel like that's important. But continue on.
The person that she has now hit is laying on the ground. His hands are still stuck in the bicycle position. His body is stuck in the bicycle position on the ground. And all this kid or old man, for all we know...
Old man with the kid voice, which is saying, a good effect.
I can't get out. He won't let me out. I can't get out. He won't let me leave.
And that was, again, I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again now, this was when I fell in love with this movie. I was like, that's the creepiest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, it worked for me so
John runs back to the car. He's like, I'm going to grab some blankets and a first aid. And as Linda's looking at the windmill, she notices that it's blowing one way, but it's spinning the opposite direction. The wind is clearly blowing to the left. Yeah. The windmill is spinning to the right. It's the opposite of where it's supposed to go.
And while it's showing her, the guy stands up behind her.
In such a creepy manner.
So good.
Smiling.
Yeah.
He grabs his bike and is just creepily smiling, walking away. Gets back on the bike while looking at her still.
And so John comes back and is like, I guess he wasn't hurt at all. We'll report it when we get to town. Like,
so nonplussed.
Here's the thing, and this is me putting thoughts in John's head, but I think John's like, dodged a bullet there. That kid's okay.
There goes a police report that I don't.
I ain't got time for this shit. I got a mystery to solve. So John somehow goes back to sleep.
Not bothered by it whatsoever.
John's like, we could hit 30 kids. I'm still getting my 40 winks.
Linda keeps trucking on as the driver. Even though she's just experienced quite a bit of trauma right off the bat.
Yeah.
She's like, fuck it, I'll keep driving.
Well, what are they going to do? Sleep in the car on the side of the road? Like,
hey, lesser people have.
I certainly have, but Linda's a little too good for that.
So she starts keeping on, trucking down the road. And
she loses the yellow lines.
Yeah, the road just starts getting darker and darker and darker. Now, I've had this real-life experience happen before where I'm driving on a bad country road, and unfortunately, my headlights go out. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm driving in pitch black.
Yeah.
My only salvation was turning on my brights.
Yeah.
But even then, when you literally watch the light go out in pitch blackness on a dark country road, you're like, that's a different kind of horror. When it happened to her, the light just goes completely out, even though her headlights are still on.
Yep.
The road it becomes ever black.
Yeah, it's just all black.
And you're like, holy shit.
She sticks her head out the window to try and make sure she's on the lines. Yeah. Which aren't there anymore.
And then all of a sudden, she's like, oh, okay, I think I'm still driving the road. It's all black underneath the tires. Thunderclouds, lightning arrows. Oh my god, I'm fucking driving this bitch like it's a Back to the Future.
Oh, I'm in the sky. That's bad.
When did this turn into a flying DeLorean?
And she sticks her head back in, and then we get the weird tunnel, right?
She's basically going through the Ichabod Crane tunnel.
Yeah, but at first, it's a tunnel with weird. It looks like It almost looks like you're driving through a 747 because the sides are all metal at first, and there's little windows.
Yeah.
As you go. And I think it might be the tunnel that John runs through later to get back to his world.
It's the portal. It's the portal between realms.
And this is going to be weird, but like it turns into a covered bridge and night changes to day. But it reminds me, and you need to tell me if you've seen this or not, because it may just be me and this memory may just appeal just to me. But if any listeners ever, feel free to comment and tell me I'm not imagining this. But there was an old episode of Scooby-Doo, one of the ones that guest starred Batman and Robin, and they're trying to catch the Joker and Penguin, right? And they're riding across a covered bridge.
Yes.
And Joker and Penguin hit a button that causes it to stand up, spin, and come back down. So they can't leave the town they're in.
Yeah.
So when they come out, they're back in the same town they were trying to escape. And I had such visions of that where she goes to this cover. And when she comes out, all of a sudden it's daytime and she's in this town. And later when John tries to leave, I get that same idea. I'm like... Oh, Joker and Penguin are just fucking making the bridge turn around.
Yeah, no, it made me think of that, and it made me think of like in Sleepy Hollow when Ichabod Crane runs across that sheltered bridge to get away from the Headless Horseman.
That is the much more like pertinent meaning because
New England style towns all still to this day still have that,
and people consider like crossing water to be a way to like evade spirits, and it's also those covered bridges often are the realm between not just one location and another, but like the spirit realm and the real realm. That is a New England trope, I dare say. And sure enough, it gets her to the town we've been looking for.
We are now in Hobbs End, and it's bright and it's sunny day.
John can't believe he slept all night.
The fucking irony. The asshole just got a very refreshing sleep. He's like, I feel well rested.
Yeah.
And she's like, you drive.
Yeah.
She's just so shook. She is so shook.
Yeah.
And
he's like, I can't believe I slept all night. I also like how much he hates this fucking town. So when they pull over, he's like, Main Street, USA. Jesus.
How to...
Like, he just keeps fucking bad-mouthing, and he's like, he can't stand this old-timey... And I think because... he is a man about truth. And these old-timey towns have this illusion of old-time folk kindness.
They're putting on a facade of what they really are.
Yeah, it's a facade of what they really are. And he can't stand it. He badmouths this town from start to finish. And it kind of made me love John a little bit.
It starts out as a natural disdain for just that style of town and living.
Yeah.
But then it turns into, like, this town's part of the fucking joke.
Yeah.
This town, it got bought out for a whole PR joke.
Ridiculous.
And so he goes up to all the shops are closed, they're looking in, and he's like, what? Where is everybody?
Once again, Linda's the only witness to some creepy shit. This time it is our dog kid.
Poor doggy is being chased by a mob of children who I remember when I first saw that, I was like, oh no, they're going to hurt the dog. They're going to hurt the dog.
Yeah.
They're going to hurt the
Yeah.
Which, I mean, eventually they do. But
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
I mean, your initial thought was like, oh, these psycho, disgusting looking kids who have the rashes all over their face.
Trigger warnings now for suicide and dog harm. Again, tell me when a dog's going to get hurt in the movie.
Right? And it's just like, so you see them chasing the dog. These kids are all nasty skin with the boils on their face and the rashes that look like bad acne, but they're kids that are like between 6 to 10 years old.
Yeah, and it's just the way it's filmed and the music, and it's in slow-mo, it's just creepy. The dog comes tearing ass around the corner, and at first I'm like, oh, we got a hellhound, it's going to attack him.
Nope,
but it just keeps running.
Yep.
And then you see a pile of kids running after it, and I'm like, oh god, those kids do not have good intentions for that dog.
And somehow Linda's the only one that sees it.
Yeah, Linda asked John, like, hey, John...
Did you see those kids?
Nope.
I don't see anybody here.
Nope, yeah.
He literally says, like, I don't see anybody here. Like, I'm convinced this town is deserted.
Yeah, Linda gets all the scares at this point. And I do think it's because she's read more of Sutter Kane's work, and therefore she is more susceptible to this shit. Like, John will get susceptible, but she's read all his books, and so she is easier to dial in and have the shit
for her,
seen.
I think that's why it's so triggering in a sense, because she's like, wait, I literally have read this and this is coming to life. Like, I'm literally watching the book come to life from what I read.
Yeah, they eventually find a hotel and more of these, oh my god, this is from the books, pop into her mind.
John makes a comment, he's like, damn, you didn't even need a map to get here. She's like,
she's like, I've been here before, so have you.
It's in my memory from the books we read.
Yeah. And she talks about there's a greenhouse next to the thing, and she's like, that greenhouse used to have weird things growing in it, and the townspeople showed up with torches and burned it out one night. That's why it's empty now. Which, that's a huge leap of logic of, oh, maybe the author spent some time here and it inspired his books, to That definitely happened. There used to be alien plants from The Color of Outer Space in that greenhouse.
John also acknowledges that this is the same hotel where the old lady who runs it winds up killing her husband.
Yeah, and he's like, look at that little old sweet lady. You're crazy.
She could barely lift that phone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, you are just so...
Yeah.
The choice to live super grounded and not give yourself a chance to even remotely entertain an out of realm experience is he's a wet blanket. That's the best way to put it. He's a very wet blanket, and she's like, I can't believe what I'm watching. She's like, I'm a part of this whole thing, and I can't believe what I'm watching.
Yeah. Well, like, you also get like that those people who are so into reality and so unable to accept anything that's outside of their worldview that those people are secretly scared that if they took one step in that direction, they would just fall into an abyss of insanity. Like, my worldview is set in concrete, and if I'm wrong about anything, I will flip shit. Yeah. So I refuse. And John's that kind of guy. So he's like, no, this is all part of the show. We're all here for the show.
And he, once again, when they go into the hotel to try and check into a room, he's like, are you sure you haven't been here before? He's like, you know an awful lot.
She's like, there's a painting behind me. There's
watch your step, that floorboard is...
Yeah, it's like it's all from the book. And the painting already is starting to do a little shift. It'll shift more
directly in front of her face. It's literally moving as she's staring at it while John is not looking.
John is not looking. Poor Linda. But they get a room. The nice old lady who has never heard of John Sutter, even though all of John Sutter's books are in the room, in their room. So she's obviously lying about that, which, once again, actually reinforces John Trent's belief that this is all a scam.
Yeah. And so Linda approaches him.
They do the window trick.
Yeah, Linda approaches him. She's like, look, I'm convinced we're living in the Sutter Kane novels because everything that I'm seeing has been written. I've read it. And it's coming to fruition just like in the books.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, really? If we were in a Sutter Kane novel, then right here, out this window, should be a giant black Byzantine church.
Yeah.
Byzantine church, that with golden eggs on top of it.
Yeah, golden onions, 250-foot spires. And he whips it open.
It's just a red barn. She's like, yeah, well, if you would have read properly, it's on the east, and she opens the window right behind her and is like, ta-da!
And sure enough, there's our church. Here's the steeple, open the door, and out come the people.
He still could not admit, like, fuck, I got that wrong. I got that one wrong. He's like, that doesn't prove anything. A black church doesn't prove anything. And here's the thing,
John Trent, at this point, to play, as I always do, devil's advocate, John Trent has had a couple of nightmares, and he's been to a town that seems to have influenced a town that Sutter Kane wrote about. He hasn't seen any of the shit Linda's seen. So it's more understandable until this next scene we're coming up on. At this point, it's still kind of understandable that he's like, this is all a scam.
He read enough to know. He read enough to know details about that church.
Right. He read enough to be like, okay, obviously Sutter... But that would be the same thing as if I read a Stephen King novel about Bangor, Maine, and then I went to Bangor, Maine, and some of the locations were the same. I wouldn't think it was real. I would just think, well, yeah, you write what you know. Like if I was writing about my house, writing a novel, it wouldn't mean that everything that happens in the novel is real just because you recognize parts of my house from the way I described them in the novel. That's where John Trent is. And also to unplay devil's advocate, he's fucking wrong, but that's where his mind's at this juncture.
Speaking of devil's advocate,
and speaking of church,
we get to the church.
We go to church. That's just the way it works in New England. Apparently.
So they arrive, and I'm not gonna lie, the architecture of this church was really sick. I'm not sure if it's a real church or they had to build it for the movie because the way that the plot of land is set up is just an open field with a random church, like big ass church there. Yeah. I don't put it past New England townships putting a church like that where they have all this land, but the church takes up the giant majority of it.
Here's what I'm guessing, and this could be totally wrong, and I haven't done the footwork. That church was there. John Carpenter was like, hey, can I paint this black for a movie? I'll paint it white again after we're done. And they said, okay, if you give us a bunch of money. That is my guess. I don't know.
I can see that.
But that's what I'm leaning towards right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, so they get there and they're banging on the door. Nobody's fucking answering.
We get another dog chase scene with the kids and the dog that, once again, only Linda is privy to, in the field next to the church. And the kids look a little more disheveled, a little more manic.
Like they're mutating.
Well, like they're mutating, and also kind of like with the bike rider, that like a lot more time has passed.
Sure.
Than has passed for John and Linda.
And as they're leaving the church and they're banging on the door, like, well, I guess nobody's here. Cavalcade of trucks filled with parents with shotguns and rifles approach the church, and Linda thinks that they're coming to attack them.
Yeah,
she's like, we gotta get out of here. They've got guns.
Which she says before you can see the guns. Again,
she knew from the writing of what was going to happen.
Yep. And they come up, and they start to move away, but then John wants to come back because the first thing out of Shotgun Dude's mouth is, Sutter, give him back. And he's like, hey, Sutter, hey, that's the guy I'm looking for.
Yeah. And so the parents are at the doorstep with their guns trying to basically...
Apparently John Sutter has got one of their children inside the church.
Sutter Kane.
Sutter, yeah. Sutter Kane.
But John turns around after hearing a shotgun blast. He doesn't run away like, Linda wants to. He's like, I'm going to go towards the gun noise.
Yeah.
And then he watches as the doors open and this young possessed child is standing there. He's like, oh, my boy. And the doors keep flapping in and out, in and out, in and out. And you get this, visual shift from all of a sudden the boy who starts getting more and more possessed, rolling his eyes back. Doors close and then open, and you see finally for the first time Sutter Kane,
who weirdly looks like John Glover when he was playing Lex Luthor's father.
A little bit, yeah. And he's just standing there with this ominous look, just looking at the parents, and he's like, "Give him back!"
With the smirk, yeah.
And Sutter Kane basically unleashes the hounds, these Rottweilers that come out to start mauling and ripping the parents apart. And the parents that did survive got away with some chunks taken out of their fucking asses.
Yeah,
but many of them,
bad.
They were mauled to death. And Linda knew that was going to happen because, again, it was written. It was written that these parents would be mauled to death by the hounds.
Yeah. And at some point, Linda says, the things Kane writes are beyond description. Which is funny because that is a critique that has also been leveled at Lovecraft, where they would say... Well, one of Lovecraft's weaknesses as a writer is when it gets to the scary thing, he just says, I can't even describe how scary it was. Just trust me, it's pretty scary. I don't... Well, I will say, some Lovecraft stories do feel a little weak because of that, but some, I think it enhances.
The ones that really hit because they go into detail.
It enhances.
But also, the ones that are some of his best works do have the downfall of the racial euphemisms.
It's another great reason that we don't use H.P. Lovecraft in this story that turned out to be very wisdom-based. Like
a lot of the Eldritch horrors were just euphemisms for foreign invaders. People from the old
Jews.
country. The old country that are trying to awaken. That's what they were all for. Again, if you can look past the racial euphemism and just look at it as cosmic horror, dude, there are great stories. But now, a lot of it is tainted nowadays. And there's some stories where I'm like, all right, cool, there's no racial elements to this.
So maybe it's good that Lovecraft
I'm not defending a racist, by the way. We are not defending a racist. We just acknowledge that unfortunately, with his great...
He's had a lot of influence on horror.
Yes.
Yeah. Can't argue that.
For better or worse.
It had a lot of influence on this movie as well.
Yeah.
But they go back to the hotel.
Also, fuck that creepy-ass little girl that was just waiting by the car whenever they finally ran back. And she's like, he sees you. With the fucking smoker's voice. Mm-hmm. Bro, if I saw that kid, I am drop-kick, Sparta kick to the chest of that child, and I'm out.
I'm like, hey guys,
your parents just got mauled. I ain't got a parent that's gonna sue me.
Loan me a shotgun. Yeah. Here, just hand one over. I got a use for it. But they go back to the inn. Yeah, they get past the scary child, get in the car, go back to the inn where Linda spills the beans.
She
about
comes
the hoax
clean, and he gets a little vindication. He gets a little vindication because Linda basically tells him, well, John, you're half right. It was partially a publicity stunt originally that we wanted to do, but, Sutter Kane never showed up to the location where we were supposed to meet.
Yeah.
And now everything is just turned into reality.
Yeah, this hobby town, not part of it. Like, this shit, not any part of it. And the fact that everything's happening this way, it hops in the way it happens in the books, not part of it. So whatever scam I was pulling, we're not in that anymore. We're in a totally different thing. And John's like, well, how can I trust you now? Like,
and speaking of scams, going with that trust issue, she immediately is like, no, please help me, stay with me, and starts trying to make out with him.
Yeah.
And of course, we wind up finding out that this is just a ploy to pickpocket his ass for the car keys.
Yeah.
Smart. Very smart.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
he's so flustered. He's like, I have to go. There's got to be some reason.
He runs downstairs where we find the painting's gotten better, if nothing else. The painting of the two people standing by the water, now their faces are all creepy and mutated.
Arms have elongated like tendrils and giant holes in their heads and faces.
Yeah, and then, speaking of good actresses, this old lady who has been in a lot of movies. I think she was Happy Gilmore's mom, was she not?
Yeah, she was Happy Gilmore's grandmother that he took care of.
Yeah. Yeah,
she was in several things in late 90s.
She's one of those people that, like, whenever I see her, I'm like, she lights up the screen. I'm a fan. But here she is acting very weird. She
looking rough, boy.
She looks, as John said, like she hasn't slept all night.
Giant red bags and black and red bags under her eyes.
Yeah, and she was like, I was up reading. And I'm like, yeah, like I can guess which author, too.
And as he's talking to her, you hear a muffled noise. Yeah. And she's like, kicking something down below her feet.
Here's the thing. If Linda had not ran by him at that exact moment and ran to the car, he would have jumped behind that counter because that's too fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like when he starts to go around is when Linda goes shooting by to jump in the car. So he runs after her, and then we cut to Granny.
And we see her naked ass old husband down on the floor, handcuffed to her ankle.
And I'm like, ooh, Granny a little kinky. All right.
She's stomping on his ass, and you're like, wait, is this some of the foreplay?
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
I believe I heard the term mistress in the conversation. It's okay.
Well, the statistics show that most elderly people nowadays are higher at a rate to catch STDs than younger people because they fuck so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're that age, why not?
I mean, you just catch them where they lie.
Yeah, Linda's gone to church and John's gone to the bar to get a drink.
Appropriate responses.
I feel like, John doesn't have a car, so he has to go somewhere local. So he goes to the nearby church where a very nice guy tries to... Even though John's being a dick because John thinks he's an actor, this guy...
Oh, you guys are putting on a great show.
This guy is begging him to fucking leave.
Please,
and I'm
get out.
I am also begging John to leave. I'm like, John, listen, this guy is so nice. You were being a shitbag, and this guy is being very kind. Listen to him. Get the fuck out.
When John just looks at me, he's like, "Oh, that's great. How much did they pay you for that line? You want a beer? You want a beer too? I'll drink to that." Say this.
John does offer him a beer. Not a total asshole.
He's like, "I'll drink to that then." Yeah. And the dude's like, "Dude, I've lost my kids. Yeah. You see this fucking mark right here on my face? This is from a 5-year-old. Her sister."
Yeah, Sutter Kane released something from the church. It affected the children first. Now it's affecting all of us. And yeah, John, of course, does not buy this. But once again, the same as when we saw the church through the window, we had to go there. As soon as the church is mentioned here, we have to go there. Linda
meets the children of the corn, the Cthulhu version.
And they are fully Cthulhu'd out now. They are, and my heart breaks. So the dog is like,
they ripped its leg off.
At first, the dog is laying next to them. And at first I'm like, oh, they caught the dog and they're actually friends. Oh, look at that. Then the dog stands up, only has 3 legs.
Yeah.
And you notice all the kids' mouths are covered in blood.
And their teeth are like fang-like.
Once again, John Carpenter, he doesn't show you, but you see it. Because, again, dog missing leg, kids with blood on their mouth, you know what happened. Yeah. And it's worse, I think, for me personally, it's worse than if they had actually shown the kids catch the dog and rip its leg off and eat it. Just the aftermath of it, and that you know that happened somewhere, for me was like even worse than if they had gone into gory detail about it.
And now these kids are all mutated, and their faces covered. Their faces kind of look like what an anglerfish looks like if it was trying to morph into a human.
Yeah.
Like if you've seen Animorph book covers, it's that panel. Is that panel halfway through the transformation from a child to an anglerfish?
Yep.
That's what it looks like.
Yep.
And Linda's like, "What are you doing out here? Where are your parents? You're our mommy now."
Yeah, and it's Mother's Day. Like,
it's Mommy's Day.
Yeah, it's Mommy's Day.
I was just like, that's not fucking weird at all.
She luckily is able to distract them with a ball. And she runs into the church.
She's like, fuck you kids, go chase.
Yeah, chase a ball. You and the dog.
As soon as she enters the black church, you see the abandon all hope ye who enter here sign.
Always good. Always a good sign.
Which is funny because that's the sign on the gates of hell in Dante's Inferno.
Yep.
Which I found funny is that they repurposed it here for a H.P. Lovecraft themed Byzantine church.
Yeah.
And when you go in, you also notice, I wonder if John Carpenter got approval to turn that cross upside down in the structure. Right? Or did they have to rebuild that internal set?
Better to ask forgiveness than permission is my guess. He just did it and then was like, Also,
the outside gives illusion of a much larger church. When she walks in, that inner lobby and pew area is very small.
Well, that's because there's a lot of back rooms, and one of them is a typing room that's about 70 feet by 70 feet.
I was expecting a TARDIS effect of it, but it was the opposite.
Yeah. But yeah, she's looking around and she finds like a room, it looks like a little cubby hole with a typewriter on the desk.
Yep.
She shuts the door, and as soon as she shuts the door, she hears typing.
Click.
She opens the door back, and now the room's huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
It's like this viscera-covered, bloody red room.
Yeah.
With Sutter Kane in the center of the desk
just tapping away with a couple of his hellhounds around him. He's got these Dobermans, the same ones that attacked the villagers.
Still licking their jowls.
Just hanging around, yeah. Sutter, and I wrote here, Sutter types and talks, and Linda falls in love.
Well, she gets yanked into the room by some tentacle from the roof, and then it shuts the door behind her, and there's no door behind her. It just seals the room away from reality.
Yeah, and Sutter, basically very happy to see her. Like, he knows she's a fan. He basically, as he's talking, you can watch her eyes get kind of sleepy. She's sort of getting hypnotized by his voice.
I was confused by this one aspect of the next scene transformation. How, as he's explaining to her what happened with him basically obtaining the power, he says, I thought for years I was just making up, but in reality, they were giving me the power to make it all real. Everything is real. Yeah. Every word, every sentence, every paraphrase.
The more people that believe, the stronger it gets.
Yes, and they are on the cusp of breaking free into this reality.
Yeah.
And she's like, why did you put it in the air?
Once again, I think because she's read all his books, she is susceptible to his hypnotism power.
And so he grabs her face and he shoves her face down into the holy manuscript.
Hey, read this shit. Boom!
Yeah, and it just lights her ass up, and she just gets a horrifying visual montage of tentacles and what's going to happen to her, what's going to happen to John, what's going to happen to the world, and what role each of them play in it. Because now she's like, oh shit, I'm just a pawn.
Yeah.
Her eyes, she comes up, her eyes are bleeding, they're running down, and she's even more hypnotic about it.
And she kisses Sutter Kane.
She embraces him, and
you get
holy
to see his
fucking
back.
Shit! Wait! We did Malignant last month. Why are we visiting Malignant again?
It's called a callback, Goreship.
It's literally on the back of Sutter Kane's head.
Yeah, and it's a callback from the back because this is in the past from when Malignant comes out.
It is so funny. It is so
callback
funny.
in every meaning of the word. Yeah, there is basically
I forgot about that little thing.
Sutter Kane on the back of Sutter Kane that's like trying to pull itself out of his body, and as she's kissing him, she's putting her hands on it. And I'm like, you can feel that, right? Like, even if you were attracted to this dude, once you feel the gooey back, I think you let go. But she doesn't because she's totally hypnotized.
And then somehow, while John has made his way back to the hotel room, he's packing his ship. He's like, I gotta get the fuck out of this town. I guess I'm gonna finally commit to it. Linda magically teleports back to the hotel room door.
Yep.
Bangs on it. He opens it up, and she just passes out into his arms.
Yeah, well, at first she's saying, I'm losing me, John. I'm losing me. And she falls down on the bed. And, And I think John is going down to tell the, either to get some answers or to tell the hotel clerk.
Try to get a 911.
To tell the hotel clerk, hey, my friend's in bad shape upstairs. Help her.
And the first thing he notices when he gets downstairs is that the painting is now, they are fully mutated people in the paintings.
Yeah, they've gone from vertical to horizontal. They're like crawling across the ground now, leaving trails of slime behind them, and they're I don't even know how to describe them. Like, there's a lot of not to steal a line from Lovecraft, but it's indescribable what they look like now.
Now this next part is really funny to me. So John sees the painting, he's like, oh shit. shit's getting wild here. And he hears the old lady screech. We get a visual of the tentacle. The old lady is mutated to look like something from Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Where she's like a giant fucking tentacle monster coming out of her fucking chest, and she no longer has legs. She's
also using an axe, though. They love axes in this town.
He hears the screech, and he just turns around and goes, "Come on, you old bitch." I was like, that's such a Bruce Campbell line. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Loved it.
Yeah. But his bravery don't last long. He gets a good shot of them in the light.
Yeah.
And she's chopping the arm off of her husband.
And then hacking the rest of him to bits, just like in the book.
Yep.
Just like in the book. It said that she was infected, mutated, and she became a monster that ripped her husband apart and hacked him up with an axe.
Yeah.
And so
she really just was sick of him dragging her around. Like,
she's like, I'm sick of your kinks.
Yeah, I'm sick of your kinks, man. But yeah, the Miss Pickman reveal was great. So he runs back upstairs.
He does a whole lot of nope.
John's a man without a country now. He's running all over the place. Runs back upstairs.
And what does he get for his troubles?
There's a glass window, and you can see Linda's shadow behind it. She's dressed... This whole time she's been dressed all in white. So you can tell it's Linda. She's still in her white. She's got black hair. But, like, there's tentacles under the doorway. Like, things are flapping out.
It looks like it's raping her, honestly. It looks like the scene from Evil Dead where it's tree rape.
Yeah, the shadows are, like, flip-flopping around her head.
Coming out the doorway.
But when he opens the door, she's just there.
Smiling at him.
Looking fine, yeah.
And the next thing we see is we get a cut to the outside of the hallway, and John goes flying through the bedroom door, smack to the hallway. He's like, all right, nope, I'm out of here. Yep. He runs. I don't blame him. I do not blame him whatsoever. He gets tossed like a fucking ragdoll through the door. He's like, all right, I gotta get the fuck out. I'm gone.
Smart man.
Yeah. So I just saw Granny mutate into some tentacle monster, hack up her husband. I just got manhandled by fucking Linda.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to make sure she was still alive, and fuck me, I'm out.
I've done too much. Yeah. Yeah, I've done too much.
Oh, and when he finally gets downstairs and he gets out of the car, he looks over to the green room, and that monster that's made of like vines and stuff and tentacles, it almost is like a humanoid body, like a Power Ranger monster, is just looking at him. Doesn't give chase, it's just looking at him, screeching and waving his arms from the green room. He's like, holy shit.
Well, I'm glad the greenhouse is being used again. Like, it looked like it had been abandoned a while. So he drives back into town. And the townspeople are doing a nice little ring around the rosy thing with Linda in the middle. Somehow she got there ahead of him.
Yeah, teleportation, bro.
Again, Sutter can put his pawns where he wants them when he wants them, because he just writes them there.
Yeah.
He all he has to do is write Linda's in the center of town, and boom, Linda's in the center of town.
So John parks the car, and because the mob's not running towards him, they're busy occupied with something in the center of the fire pit.
One does walk by him long enough to say "fuck you," though, which I found again very funny. Good line.
Dude, it literally like it's like hobbling down the street really quick, and John's just kind of look at it, and it stops and looks at him and goes "fuck you," kind of like
just keeps walking.
Yeah, it kind of like jumps at him to punk his ass out.
Yeah.
And John's like, "Huh," and runs inside the bar again.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, this is the next scene where we discuss suicide trigger warning.
Yes. He goes back into the bar, and the guy that begged him to leave earlier is looking rough. Half his cheek's been ripped off. He's got scratches all over him. And John is now doing the, instead of the, you're a bunch of scam artists, he's now alternating between, these are amazing special effects. I haven't figured out what's going on yet, but it's got to be fake. He's alternating between that and trying to get this guy to tell him what the hell's going on. He literally keeps
shouting, like, there's a logical explanation for all this. There is
Tell me what the hell's going on. So, he's torn between these two options. And the guy is like, look, my kid did this to me. He killed my wife. He killed his sister. Like... I don't know what else I can tell. Like, I don't know how to get you to believe.
And there's only one thing left for me to do.
He's got the shotgun. He puts it to his cheek, under his neck.
John tells him, no, you don't have to do this.
He says, I have to.
He's writing me this way.
He wrote me this way, yeah.
Yeah, and shotgun facelift.
Oh, yeah, rough. And John is just, he has no rudder. He's just all over the place. He runs back outside.
Sees Linda. And what does he do? What's the first thing he does when he sees Linda? He just turns around.
She punches him first, to be fair. Linda punches him. And he's like, and for a second he's like, punches her and throws her over his shoulder. He's like, I'm going to hit you, but it is for your own good. And I know people say that all the time, but in this case, I'm serious. I need you out of this town. So he throws her over his shoulder.
It was the delivery of it all. He walks out, she hits him, he turns, he's like, what the? bitch,
boom.
punch. She drops. He puts her over her shoulder, throws her in the car.
Yeah.
And then as he's trying to get away,
the townspeople have finally noticed him and are walking towards him with their many axes. These are kids, adults, everybody. The whole town is now completely.
He's trying to get away. Linda grabs the fucking keys from him and swallows them. Yeah,
he's looking for the keys. He looks over. Linda's got him and fucking, swallows them. And he tries to grab him out of her mouth. Too late.
And he's like, fuck it. Knocks her out again.
Yeah.
And that second punch really sent it home for me.
Poor Linda.
He's like, I got nothing left to lose. Knockout.
Opens up the glove compartment, finds a screwdriver, hot wires the car, gets the fuck out.
I will say this. That is the quickest carjack I think I've ever seen since Gone in 60 Seconds.
Kind of makes me wonder what John's been doing in his free time.
Nicolas Cage would be so proud of how fast he hotwired that car.
Oh, yeah.
That was gone in less than 60 seconds.
He's like, that's one car down. Although, if you look at the car, it's not one that would be on the list in that movie.
hey, it was still faster than any fucking hotwire I've ever seen.
Oh, man, the hotwire.
I was very impressed. But he's trying to drive down the road with Linda talking shit about him now.
Yeah, Linda's giving him a hard time. She's trying to kiss him. She's talking about, like...
It's like, he's writing me this way.
I'm supposed to kiss you now. It's what the fans want to see.
And she's like, we're all just a pawn in this. He's got a job for you that you have to do.
You can't leave yet. Yeah.
He's like, he still has a job for you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, damn, dude.
Yeah. And this is where he keeps trying to leave and being unable to, yes?
Just about this point, he goes back one time, he turns back around, and Linda's mocking him. So he pulls over to the side of the road, and he's like, why can't I get out? He sees the old man kid at the phone booth.
Yeah.
Just riding away and smirking at him. And now this next scene is really disturbing.
Yeah.
So they're parked, and he's like, what the fuck? How do I leave here? How do I just keep getting pulled back again? Linda gets out of the car, and her head is all the way down near the floor. Her head is upside down backwards.
Yeah.
And she's
doing the Exorcist stair spider walk out of the car.
Crab crawl
towards
around him.
Yeah.
And then her body rotates back to normal, but then her head stays upside down, and she's just like, hee 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 hee.
And he's like, can't believe I made out with you.
Yeah.
He jumps back in the car, and so every time he tries to drive, he ends up back in front of the axe-wielding mob. And this time he's like, fuck it. If I can't go out, I'll go through. So he decides he's just going to run the fucking mob down.
And of course, right as he gets to go back, he tries to light up a cigarette, and he's like, motherfucker, I thought I was free.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck it, I'll run him over.
Yeah.
They use Linda as a distraction when he goes to plow through
they all step aside, and then Linda's in front of him. And even though he's more than willing to hit everyone else in the town, he still has a soft spot for her. Swerve, wreck, wakes up in a confessional booth.
Catholic hell.
Yeah.
Catholic hell. That's what he woke up in.
Yeah.
The first level of Catholic hell is waking up in a fucking confessional.
Yeah. Especially when Sutter Kane's in the preacher role next door, talking some... Because, of course, this confessional does not have a door. He can't get out of it.
What's his option? Well, there's no doorway out here. Let me try to light up a cigarette in confessional.
Yeah.
He wants his damn cigarette, bro.
John, dude.
He wants his goddamn cigarette.
People who smoke in high-stress situations smoke more. And, boy, he's in a high-stress situation. But Sutter shows up, and he's really given up the plot here. It's like, look, the old ones can make their way back if people believe. And, I got more people to believe in this than the fucking Bible. And it's interesting. He floats the theory, and I assume in this world it's true. He's like, you know what? If enough people had believed in the Bible, God would have been real.
I really enjoyed his theory of that.
But they didn't. But you know what they did believe in? My crazy ass books.
Yeah, and it made it reality. It allowed them to come through.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, there is a logical reason here. Trust me. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because
it's like, you know what? Let's continue this talk in my office and see if that convinces you. Teleporting to my fucking office.
When Sutter Kane appears, basically making John sit on his lap. That was very. That was a choice. I was like, damn, he really is the Catholic priest. And then he forces John's face into the fucking confessional to get a vision of what's going to happen and how he's going to play a part in letting the old ones out.
He's like, you have one job: deliver the fucking.
He's like, I'm going to show you exactly what your job in this whole
just deliver
scheme
the manuscript,
is.
baby. Yeah.
And I wrote this down because I thought it was a good point. The duality here is both sad and ironic that John and Cain insist they have no strings on them and that they will both do as they please, that they are not beholden to anyone.
Yeah.
And it's they both equally fall into the same predetermined destiny that
They're
they were
tools of the ancient ones.
Yeah, and they refuse to. They both think that there's no strings on me. There's no strings on me.
Yeah.
Cain even straight up says, "Oh, I'm in control. They don't pull my strings." And I just thought it was so funny that you guys are two halves of the same coin, but you can't see it.
Yeah. So he gets on the manuscript, and the doorway opens up. He's like, "Follow that back to your world." And here's the weird thing. He says, "I can't hold them back any longer." And I'm like, well, Sutter, your whole goal was to let them out. Yeah. Why are you holding them back at all? And I guess it's because they are so of one mind that they would have fucking destroyed John before he could deliver the manuscript, and then they don't. It's like, when you're talking to an ancient old one, I guess you can't logically explain to them that this guy needs to stay alive so they can get more powerful. They're like, but I'm hungry now, Daddy. And they would have just devoured him.
And I love when he's in the little void that leads to the doorway to the ancient ones.
Yeah.
I love how when he finally, basically melts into it and the portal ripens, he is a part of the backdrop.
Yeah.
He becomes
and he's a page in the book. Yeah, as you rip it, the words are on the other side of it.
Yeah, and it's just the entire dimension is being held together by Sutter Kane's words. Yeah. By the pages of the book.
Yeah, oh man.
And now we get back to that metal tunnel.
Yeah. Which he's looking into. No, first he goes to look at the hole that Sutter Kane made when he turned paper. And Linda is describing what's happening as it's happening, and she uses the word Stygian, which I did not know. It means very dark. I looked it up. So I learned a new word.
It's also funny because it literally is the I stared into the abyss and the abyss stared back. Mm-hmm. It's literally that fucking turn of phrase. Yeah. And the reason I said that they're in that little metal awning place is because when you see from the inside of the hole to behind him, you see, oh shit, that's the gateway that we saw originally when they drove into it.
Yep.
So that's what's going to lead it. And then you start seeing all these fucking awesome practical effect monsters that look like deep sea creatures trying to fucking mutate into humans, just chasing after it.
Oh yeah.
You see
he takes off running
and tentacles and clip clop flippers.
He tries to get Linda to come with him. She says, "I can't. I've already read to the end." So she knows her part in this journey ends here. So, and she's forced to do as Sutter Kane has written. But yeah, John takes off down these fucking monsters are all chasing him, and there's just no end to them. There's
the practical effects. I was just like,
there's just
I love the monster suits.
Yeah, they're all so neat, and everyone's different, and they're all very Cthulhu-esque, indescribably freaky. And and they're chasing him through this fucking tunnel, and oh my god, right when you think they're going to catch him, back in the real world.
Yeah, he's in the middle of a crossroad, which is funny because in old southern folklore, crossroad demons is the point where you cross between thresholds.
It's also where you make deals with the devil.
Yeah, so this is essentially feels like that representation. I'm not going to speak for what John's directorial choice was for having him show up at a crossroad, but for someone who knows a little bit of backlore, it felt like a good representation.
Yep.
Also,
this is where we get our paperboy.
Yeah, but when Linda was reading in detail, describing what John was seeing, looking into the abyss, and what horrors he saw and his reaction, you know what vibe it got while she was reading it and it was happening in real time? It reminded me of Never Ending Story. Because in Never Ending Story, she's reading the book to him as Bastian is watching it happen. She's and Bastian came upon.
Oh yeah,
it is the exact same thing. And he's like, "Wait, this is how it's supposed to happen."
Except they didn't have the word Stygian in Never Ending Story. It means very dark. I'm so excited. I'm always happy when I learn new words.
That for me, that's an old word because that's a band.
Yeah, of course. Of course, some black metal bands already got the name Stygian.
Technical death metal band.
I'm sure every word for black has been used by some metal band somewhere.
Banta Black.
It's fair. It's very fair.
But yeah, no, John is at the crossroads threshold. He is now back in what we consider the real world, reality.
Yeah, the windmill's running the right way now. On top of it. And he's got this huge black manuscript that he just throws on the ground. He just leaves it.
He's like, oh, fuck that shit. And we get a young Anakin Skywalker, pre-Darth Vader, approaching him on his paper route through the countryside of Tatooine. Basically, hey, you all right, dude?
Yeah.
He's like, well, where are we at? Have you ever heard of Hobbs End? He's like, no, I don't think so.
Do you want a paper?
That's a weird thing.
That kid, well, it's capitalist, man. That kid's trying to make money. He's trying to get his paper. By selling paper, oddly enough. But yeah, he's no Hobbs End. And he just asks the kids to point to the highway.
Fuck that manuscript. I don't want no part of it.
He just leaves it on the ground. Hitches a ride with a trucker.
Successfully hitchhikes with a trucker to a motel.
Yeah.
Where he has his little rock back and forth, sitting in the quiet room moment.
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised he didn't do in the shower, clutching his knees.
Oh, man, that's where I do my best crying.
Because it felt like after all that mental taxation, that's the appropriate response.
Yeah. But he as we'll see over the next few scenes, he cannot escape this manuscript. It ends up mailed to the hotel.
One more great line. The package shows up to the motel, and John starts freaking out. He's like, who the hell delivered this? The young kid's like, I don't know, dude. I wasn't working last night. The old mustache manager comes out and is like...
big. The big guy who could kick John's ass comes out.
John's like, well, then who was? He comes out and goes, I was, and I didn't see shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just how he stands there all fucking like, what are you going to do to me?
I'm like, John, you're about 2 seconds for getting your ass whooped.
I'm sorry, like, I let out a cackle because of just how that dude was so committed. This actor had one line in the movie, and his whole line was, I did, and I didn't see shit.
That's good acting and good directing right there. But John, so this time John burns it in the sink. Uses that lighter that he also uses for cigarettes to burn the fuck out of this manuscript and get rid of it for good this time.
John thinks he's free, so he's taking a nice long Greyhound bus ride back to the city.
Well, first... Oh, no, that does happen first. Yeah, then fucking Sutter Kane.
He is a petty god. That was my biggest thing. I was like, he is a petty-ass god.
He really is. He plays he gets him while... He catches him sleeping. Don't catch him napping.
He's like, oh, you think your job's over? No, you're still part of my plan, bud.
By the way, love blue. Love the color blue.
Snap.
And when he wakes up, there's a blue filter over the camera, and everything's blue, and John just starts fucking screaming.
Yeah.
Then he wakes up again, the old double wake up, and they're like, you were having a nightmare. So he's like, okay, this is not over. So he goes to the records department to try and find Hobbs End and gives this poor lady a hell of a time. She's like, for the 10th time, I'm telling you, I'm sure you went to a place just as you described it with all the crazy monsters. There is no Hobbs End, though. Yeah. So it had to have a different name.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very funny. She's like, oh, yeah, all that's probably true.
She was very patient with him smoking and blowing in her face the entire time she's trying to be receptive to helping him out.
Yeah. He goes and talks to the guy that owns the publishing house, and that guy's like, so you're saying I sent you with a girl named Linda Stiles? I sent you alone. I know I sent you alone. Why can I not remember her? And John's like, she must have been written out. Yeah. And he's like... he mentions the manuscript.
He's like, I destroyed it. I'm sorry, I couldn't bring it back to you.
Yeah,
I thought I was going crazy, and I feel like I must have gone crazy.
He's like, now I know you're mistaken because you delivered that thing months ago.
So he's lost an entire section of time.
Oh yeah,
an entire half a year's worth of time. Yeah. Because they've already published this book, and
the movie's coming out next month.
Yeah, they're getting ready to release the movie shortly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the fuck?
And sure enough, we see all these lines. We see people fighting, breaking windows. And we see John Sutter looking in one of the windows. And the lines around the block. And he sees a nerdy kid. And he's like, oh, you're a big...
Did you read Sutter Kane?
Yeah, you read Sutter Kane? And the guy has the eyes.
He's like, you read the new book then? He's like, of course.
Yes, I love it.
This shouldn't be any shock.
This shouldn't surprise you. And fucker lifts an axe, just like our publisher from the beginning, and buries it in this kid's head. And then we come back to the asylum, and we're like, now I know why you're in the crazy house.
The creepy part is the kid smiled when he saw the axe. Mm-hmm. He did know it was coming.
He read the book.
And it was funny because prior to that, before he goes to the CEO's office, he rips back the poster of the previous book and he sees his own face staring back at him.
Yeah, because his face is on the movie posters, which are now out. Yeah, so we go back to the asylum, and now we know the whole story, why he's in here, why he doesn't want to leave. Ren leaves him because...
Straight up says...
I'll be back. I want to help you.
He's like, I'm going to walk out of this room, and I don't know if I'm going to come back.
No, he says, I want to come back. But he says it in a way where you're like...
I don't believe you, yeah. It's
he's like, I want to come back. I want to help you. I don't know if I'm going to or not, but because he's just
so like, oh, that was homie, you did go crazy.
Yeah. And I thought the axe through a dude waiting in line for a book would have convinced you of that. But if you needed more proof, here's the rest of the story.
But John also explains to him, like, I'm not coming back out of this cell.
No,
he's like,
I'm safer in here. It's going to get a lot worse out there.
He said his belief was that I'll be safer in here because nobody will be able to read the books here. Nobody will be able to have access to the madness.
Yeah.
That is a far cry from what really happens. Bro, there's security guards who like to read on their fucking night shift, and that's exactly what happens here.
He was like, he didn't say it's safer, he said it's safer. And I guess if you're in a locked, padded room, you are a little safer.
But his logic was that nobody was going to be able to read the books because inmates don't get access to that. That's what his mind went to. Yeah,
and there's a creepy scene where Dr. Wren's leaving, and Dr. Saperstein is like, "Oh, do you read Sutter's book? Do you read Sutter Kane?" And the way he says it, his eyes are just aglow, and you're like, I know you do.
He's part of the madness.
Dr. Wren does not answer and walks out.
And one of the last things John says to Wren before he closes the door is he explains, he's like, this was bound to happen. Every species can smell its own extinction.
Yeah.
I was like, God, another great line!
Yeah, it's going to get a lot worse out there.
Yeah. He's like, you'll see, Doc. You'll see.
So Wren does leave, and we're left alone in John's cell, and we get some horrible sound effects and some shadows later on that night.
You hear the guards yelling, you hear gunfire.
The door starts bending inwards,
you
like
see blood splattering,
the shit out of it.
Trying to rip it open, and then all the lights go out for a quick second.
And then silence.
John opens up his cell, and you see...
his cell just opens. Like, the door just kind of almost falls off the hinges.
True. But he walks the rest of the way out.
And hey, look, John's a free man.
Yeah, he sees all the carnage. There's blood all over every single cell door walking down the row.
Yeah.
There's
an emergency radio on that's like talking about how bad shit's gotten outside.
People are in mass hysterics, causing mayhem across the city. Those of us who have not been infected, please be safe. Take cover.
Which I thought this was interesting because this showed John had an option. He could have sought these people out and tried to save humanity. But as he's walking down the city streets, he sees the opening
of the movie. He was lucky though to make it out of that in the hospital though, because as he's walking down the doorway, some shadowy figure runs by really quick, making a fucking a growling noise.
Yeah, some monster still out there back there eating inmates.
Yeah, some psycho that did cause mayhem at the insane asylum. Basically, is like, I'll let you go.
I will say this. You say lucky. I don't think
it's part of the plan.
They wouldn't have touched him because later, as he's walking down the streets, you see the movie marquee in the Mouth of Madness, but behind him you see all sorts of crazy shit happening, which means he's walked from this asylum that's by itself all the way here. He is God's blessed. Like, I don't think anyone will go near him because Sutter wants to put the final nail in the coffin of John's sanity. So John sees on the movie poster that it is starring John Trent. It is starring him in the movie.
And, he kind of composed himself when he left the hospital because he wiped his face off with that,
he cleaned the crosses off his face.
I'll wipe the crosses off. He's just like,
what if I see a girl I want to talk to? I gotta get prettied up.
It was just the nonchalantness of Sam Neill's like, well, I guess there's no need for these now. Yeah. I'm just gonna...
Just clean up a little. Ain't no harm in it.
He gets to the matinee theater and he sees himself starring in the movie poster of In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah. Now this is meta as fuck because he's just spent 2 hours watching the movie In the Mouth of Madness.
And he's watching that same movie back of himself.
He sits down and he is watching the movie we just watched. It's just cutting the highlights, and occasionally it'll play a scene over and over again, like when he says, this is a hoax. This is a hoax.
There's got to be a logical reason. Yeah. There's got to be logic.
Sutter is just fucking with it, making it skip at the parts where he's saying something that looks foolish.
And so he's just got to laugh through the pain.
He starts laughing, and you can see, and then it turns into like crying. Yeah. And this is some of the best acting I've seen anywhere. And this is the way the movie ends, is with him laugh crying, watching In the Mouth of Madness cut to black. And that is the end of the movie. And I cannot imagine a better ending to that movie than that. There is no humanity. There will only be lone survivors. If you know, then you know. But yeah, and that is the end of In the Mouth of Madness. And
quality cinema.
I hope we have explained to you why it is one of my and Goreship's favoriteest movies. I hope you're feeling the love.
And most importantly, it's one of those movies that it's such a quick watch, you forget that it's almost going to be over when you get to the climax of the movie. The climax of the movie, everything that happens after the final hoorah is only maybe an extra 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's done. And you're like, dude, what a nice bow to wrap this up with. Because you get, so this was just all a means to an end. The fucking madness was having the
and that end is the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what do you do at the end of the world? Just laugh through the tears.
Yeah. He says, in 5, 10, maybe only 1 year, humanity will just be a bedtime story that they tell their children.
Yep.
Which reminds me of the end of the book I Am Legend. Spoilers ahead if you haven't ever read the book, but the end of the book is
15 years late if you haven't.
More than that. That's just the movie. The book was written 1970s. It's an old fucking.
I know.
Book.
I Robot was written in the 70s.
Yeah, it's an old fucking book. I Am Legend. But basically, the end of it, the vampires, monsters. They're not really vampires, but these monsters have broken in, and they've got him. They're getting ready to kill the guy, the main guy of the story, and he's like, "Yeah, just remember that even after you kill me, my legend will live on. I will be the nightmare that you tell your children because I've murdered so many of you motherfuckers." It's he goes out kind of with the Braveheart screaming freedom thing, and that's where the title of the book, I Am Legend, comes from. This is kind of that same thing. We will become just stories that these Cthulhu monsters tell their children at bedtime because we are going extinct because of the madness. And man, a perfect bow. Anything else you want to say about Mouth of Madness before we delve into this junk drawer I got over here?
No, thank you, John Carpenter, for existing.
John Carpenter, you're a hero and a saint.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know how many times I've watched this now, but I don't really think I ever get tired of it. It's one of those ones where I can watch it repeatedly at least once to twice a year.
Yeah,
and
it is just that good.
It just stays true. It
just
stays
that
true.
Fucking good.
So I loved it. Good pick. I always enjoy getting a chance to rewatch this movie because one, Sam Neill's amazing, and I am a big Carpenter stan.
Yes, absolutely. All right. It's time for Junk Talk, and Goreship has brought us a short. What are we talking about?
This month I chose the recently released short film titled "Goodnight, Darling," written and directed by Adam Asimov, and
not that Isaac Asimov, not the iRobot Isaac Asimov.
It stars. It's credited starring Anna Sophia Robb, who you may know from Bridge to Terabithia, Escape to Witch Mountain remake with The Rock. She's been in a lot of stuff.
Okay.
She was most recently in the Carrie Diaries, and then the second actress in this movie, Vivian Leigh Blair. She is a very young star, up and coming. She was in the most recent adaptation of The Boogeyman, the Stephen King novel that was made into a really good horror movie that came out last year.
Okay.
She's a child actor that is doing really good in a lot of horror movies. She was also in Smile. She's killing it. She's killing it. Right. So, this was really fun to watch. But Goodnight, Darling is about two sisters who wonder if their mother's strange behavior is a response to a recent family loss, or if something more sinister is at work. It's a horror movie film about the moment in childhood when we discover our parents aren't the people we thought they were.
Oh.
So, we begin the opening of
with
this...
With a short hair girl. I love short hair girls.
Yeah, Sophia...
Little song I wrote about
Anna Sophia cut all her hair off. She has a pixie cut.
Yep.
And that's why I didn't really recognize her at first until I looked at the credits. And I was like, oh, shit, that is her.
Yeah. She's doing some packing.
Yeah. They're packing up the house. It seems like there's a shift in their life that's happening, and she is...
quick aside, just something I want to say now, so I don't have to say it every 30 seconds. This whole short has really... the lighting is used to great effect. The lighting in it is top-notch.
Shadow play.
Yeah, great shadow play, and also great, I'm a sucker for when a source is lit by just one light, when there's just a table lamp or just a light in a back hallway, when there's one light source for some reason in movie, like, even if it's not really one light source, because it rarely is in a movie set, but when they make it look like all the light is being produced by one bulb, it creates a certain sense of, like, fragility. Like, that light could go out at any time. Then you're in the fucking dark. Like, you're one bulb blowing out away from complete darkness. And it's a certain type of vulnerability that I always appreciate in all forms of cinema, but especially horror movie and especially shorts. And they do a lot of that here.
It plays very well into this opening sequence because as she's packing, she hears her sister crying out, screaming for someone to go away, get out of here, leave me alone. She runs in, her sister, what you think is having a night terror, it's only being lit by a nightlight in the corner of the room. And she's like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, it's Mom. She's like, oh, she was probably just coming to check on you, you know? Yeah. She's like, well,
smells different.
She smells different. She looks bad.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's probably just exhausted from work, and she was probably just coming to say goodnight. Now, don't worry about it. Go back to sleep. You know, are things going to be okay? You know, just because things are different doesn't mean that it's bad.
Yeah.
And she leaves that little bit of advice with her younger sister, who clearly is...
Which is good advice in a situation.
She's going through it. Whatever is happening, she's going through it.
Yeah.
And so she goes downstairs, and she basically sees her mom standing in the kitchen with her back turned to her.
Yeah.
And again, with like you were saying about the lighting, there's no lights in the hallway. It's only the kitchen light that's on. Everything else is in darkness.
And once again, I got as soon as I saw that lady with her back, I was like, I don't trust that bitch. I don't know what it is, but I do not trust that lady.
Yeah, and she's like, Mom, she's like, yeah, honey.
Yeah, seems perfectly normal.
Yeah, Mom's just standing at the cabinet, and the older daughter, is trying to let her know, like, hey, I think you're scared.
Well, first of all, she says, I didn't hear you come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear you come home, or enter home.
She's like, when did you get home? I didn't hear you come in.
Yeah, she doesn't say anything. She completely ignores it.
Yeah, she's just standing there with her hand on the cupboard.
Holding a cup.
Yeah. Just standing there, facing away.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, you really, freaked out whatever the younger sister's name was, I forget.
Yeah, yeah.
But she really freaked her out. And she's like, oh? And she's just like, yeah, I know that this loss is probably really hard on you.
Said something about missing Dad.
Yeah, and she's like, it's got to be...
I think she misses Dad.
Yeah, it's really tough because she misses Dad. Your father will be home soon.
And that part, I was like...
Well, then it shows the mom opening the cupboard, and the daughter grabs the glass off the counter, and she's looking at it, and she sees meat just stuffed up in the fucking cabinet with the plates.
And it's just dripping down.
And she looks down at her cup that she just grabbed.
And it also has a...
blood in it, and she starts backing away. The mom turns to her...
I didn't know it was meat. I thought it was like a balled up sweater covered in blood.
It's like a stack of fucking rotten meat.
Okay. Like I thought it was a piece of like dark cloth that had been soaked in blood. But it's meat.
I thought it was like bloody clothes at first too, but no, it's like a bunch of fucking rotten meat just stuffed in the cupboard that's dripping all over.
Okay.
That's that rancid smell that the youngest daughter was talking about. Mom smells funny.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was Mom smells funny.
Yeah. And so she's looking at her and she's backing away. The mom's just like, what's wrong, honey? And starts rubbing her neck and scratching under her face like her skin is coming loose.
Like it's itchy, yeah.
And like it doesn't fit right. And she just keeps rubbing her face. And I'm like, at any moment, I'm expecting a Scooby-Doo shit to happen where she peels back the face.
I did too. But it was a good bait and switch because the daughter backs away.
Into the hallway, light just being lit, and she puts the cup down. And she just backs away.
Yeah. So, and then she just goes to bed, which I'm like...
Yeah, it cuts to her laying down in her bed, and you hear a giggling noise.
And I'm like, wait, so this happened. So what is she thinking at this point? Man, Mom is not dealing with this well.
Really strange.
Yeah. I guess I'll just I'll sleep on it.
I was expecting more of a reaction in terms of like, I think she misses Dad. Oh, your dad will be home soon. Bro.
Well, at this point, I thought it was a divorce. Because of the way she didn't react to that. See, I was like, oh, Mom is so...
I thought Mom was in denial about a death.
Oh, I thought she was in denial about a divorce.
I thought she was in denial about
Because denial about a death and saying he's coming home soon is totally different from denial about a divorce and saying he's coming home soon. I gave her more benefit of the doubt. But then when I saw the bloody goo in the thing, I was like, That's when I was like, oh, maybe he is dead, and she's still saying she's coming home soon.
Also, I thought the reason why the youngest sister was like, she smells funny is maybe mom's becoming an alcoholic. Maybe there's alcohol. And it changed, like, and she's like, mom's acting different, and her being drunk would explain the weirdness.
And the way she's talking.
Yeah, and the way that she's not recognizing your father's dead, rather than, just waiting to come home.
Yeah.
So
she's in bed, and
before she gets in bed, she checks on her sister.
Yeah.
And her sister is sleeping, and then when she shuts the door, the sister just rolls over and opens her eyes and is just laying there in the darkness, just watching, waiting. Yeah. Well, while she's in her room, she hears noises coming from outside the door, a little hee pitter patter. She thinks her sister's fucking with her.
Yeah.
So she gets up and.
Well, it sounds like her sister's talking to someone.
No, it sounds like she was just giggling.
Oh, to me, I thought
she tried to open the door. She thought her sister was trying to open the door, and as she hears the door open, she sits up and the door shuts, and she's like, "Huh." So she goes to look at the door. No one's out there. She turns around and she sees headlights pulling into the driveway.
Yeah.
And she goes and she looks out the window, and you hear her mom on a phone call, yelling, "Is like, no, you were supposed to do this and that. That's why I did this." And she's like,
"So maybe it is a divorce."
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Now that I think about it. Yeah,
because mom's just working late and she's fucking so consumed with business.
Yeah,
you know.
Either or. Yeah.
But she goes, "Mom?"
Yeah.
And behind her, this creepy old lady that's sagging flesh and rotten skin goes, "Yes, darling."
And like she's like strokes her face as she's coming into the camera.
And she just goes, and it goes cut to black. I'm like, bro,
so good.
I loved that end because you're like, is it a skinwalker?
Yeah,
is it a shapeshifter?
What's happening now?
Is it a changeling?
And there's so many unexplained things. Like, why was the daughter laughing? Is there a second skinwalker that is now becoming the kid? What was that pile of meat in the drawer? Like
it's her skin suit.
Yeah, well, maybe, but like I always assumed with the skin suit you had to skin the person you wanted to become, and the mom's still fine.
Did they have a pet? Maybe it was the dog.
Yeah, it could have been the dog. It could have been the dad. If it is a divorce case, it could have been the dad.
But it's still unsettling to see rotten meat just soaking in the cabinet, and your mom just like treating it like, oh, it's supposed to go here.
Yeah, there's enough. That was the thing, because she said something about the glass. She's like, oh, here they go. Like she doesn't know where things.
Yeah.
And also, I forgot to mention this is the daughter's like, hey, we're supposed to be packing up. And the mom is unpacking and putting things back.
Yep.
So you can tell her mind is not all the way there.
You're thinking maybe it's dementia,
right?
Maybe,
but no, it's because this isn't the mom. This is someone. This is something like a fae or a skinwalker or a creature trying to plain pretend. And it turns out that is horrifying. Because she's a fucking
when you
freak.
just see this old lady's shadowy figure walking up on her as she sees her real mom, coming from the driveway,
and you don't get a clear shot of her. Like you get enough to know she's old and also falling apart.
Yeah.
But you don't get like the full reveal of the creature in daylight, which is for the betterment of the short, I would say.
And you only get her cast in the moonlight shadow. Like you don't see, once again, it's all lit just by the natural room lighting.
Just the one light, yeah.
So what you see from the window is what you see as she turns around.
Yeah.
And
nightmare fuel. Just
it very much so is like, oh shit. But I do love the commentary. I do love the commentary that it is like your parents aren't who you think they are when you get older. Like something changed.
Well, yeah, because when you're a kid, you think they're invincible and there's no problem they can't solve. And when you first reach that age where there is a problem that your parents can't solve, like suddenly you can't pay the electric bill, or your parents are getting divorced, or like someone really close to one of them dies and you see them cry for the first time. Like all these things that like you put your parents on a pedestal generally, and this horror short seems to be about when that pedestal falls down, when you find out, oh, my parents are just as confused as I am. Like they're struggling through this life the same way I am. Oh shit. Because then you feel in danger, because as a child, you feel protected by them. And when you realize that they don't have control of the situation either, as a child, you feel really vulnerable. More vulnerable. Like the first time it happens, it's a vulnerability that like everyone should go to therapy for. And I love this short, and it was a great choice. And I like that if we aren't just totally reading into it, then I like that that's something that touches on in a very cool, scary way.
From the description, it does say when it comes to like the way that a parent handles loss and how it changes your perception of them, going from being your big protector and your hero. Yeah. It was in the description, so I was like, oh, that's great. That's great that they were very forefront about it. Yeah. But using a mythical creature, like some type of horrifying creature as, like a plot point to like convey the horror that you feel.
Yeah.
Like, man, you're not who I thought you were. It is a very real triggering thing that we are all going to feel at some point in our life. Like that illusion of a superhero facade is just shattered.
Yeah.
Like the person that you look for protection and to have all the answers doesn't have the answers and cannot protect you.
No.
And if in some fact become the problem.
Absolutely.
They become the danger. So
sometimes
great points. And
like dad becomes an alcoholic and starts swinging. That is definitely changes your perception.
Like I said, the first time I saw it, I thought mom was drunk. I thought mom was going through the emotions by coping with substance.
Yeah, I thought she was going through a divorce and they were going to have to leave the house because they couldn't afford it anymore. And her stubbornly unpacking stuff her daughter had packed was her like refusing to accept reality. And then, of course, it's 1,000 times worse than that because that's how horror movies work. Goreship, it's been a fucking treat. As always, anything you want to say to the fans before we head out? Next month, we're doing 2023, All of Us Are Strangers. As usual, there will be links in the show notes and also links to the the movie we just talked about and the short we just watched. Send a little love to the shorts. Like if we send you to a short, you watch it and you like it, put a little comment under it. And also, while you're commenting, put a nice little comment under our stuff too.
Judgmental Horror Junkie sent me suggested this.
Oh yeah, if while you're commenting them you name drop, it would not hurt our feelings. Don't feel obligated, but it wouldn't hurt our feelings a bit if you did.
We appreciate indie horror, and we love getting the chance to find these little snippets and
bring them to you,
share and discuss them with you.
Yes.
But I had a blast. Really enjoyed both of these watches.
Yep.
It's always a good time when we get together.
And next month, it's happening again.
I'm ready.
Next episode's coming out April 1st.
And that is not a joke.
And that is no joke, yes. Until then, we love you very much. Good night, darling.
Adios.